Okay, hello, my name is Megan Sathry. I'm with the Lewis County Planning Department, and I want to welcome you to the Planning Commission public meeting today. This is a meeting taking place in person, streaming via Zoom and YouTube Live, and it is being recorded. For those joining us via Zoom, please remember to mute your phone or device when you are not speaking. If you forget to mute your phone or device, we will mute you. Tonight's meeting is a public hearing on the Centralia and Chehalis proposed UGA expansions and workshops on the Adna grocery store and the Goede rezones. A reminder that the Zoom chat feature is modified, so participants may report technical difficulties directly to myself, the clerk. No public comment or questions will be taken through the chat feature. And I'll turn it back to Mindy.
Thank you. So before we get started, I just wanted to introduce our newest Planning Commission member, Kathy Chastain. We wanted to welcome her. She's representing District 2. I know she introduced herself to the people in the room, but I don't know if you want to say hi to anybody. There's 2 commissioners who are on Zoom tonight. If you wanted to just let them know who you are.
Kathy Chastain, longtime resident of Lewis County, and I'm proud to be here to assist with the Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start with a roll call. The following planning commissioners are present in the room: Commissioner Spogan, Commissioner Russell, Commissioner Alves, Commissioner Corbin, and Commissioner Chastain. The following planning commissioners are present on Zoom: Commissioner Fritsch and Commissioner Foster. So with 7 planning commissioners present, we do have a quorum. We're now ready to begin. Chair Spogan.
Thank you, Megan. I'm Lori Spogan, and I'd like to call to order the July 26, 2022 meeting of the Lewis County Planning Commission. Prior to tonight, the commission received the agenda for today, and the agenda is displayed on the screen. I'd like to entertain a motion and a second from the Planning Commission to approve the agenda as written.
This is Commissioner Corbin. I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, let's vote.
Commissioner Chastain, we did not explain this to you, I don't believe, but you can either just vote verbally by saying yes or no, and or you can use the Zoom features.
Do you have your tablet? Aye.
You have to turn it on so the red light's on so we can hear you.
Yes, I agree.
So I'm getting feedback from the audience that it's difficult to hear, so please speak up and speak directly into the microphone. Thank you.
And we have a yes from Commissioner Foster on Zoom. And I believe I saw a vote from Commissioner Fritsch
Yes.
and Commissioner Chastain. Okay, so the motion passes with 7 yes and 0 no votes.
Thank you. Also, prior to tonight, we received the meeting notes from our last meeting, which was July 12th, 2022. And if there are no corrections, I'd like to entertain a motion and a second.
Commissioner Corbin, I'll make the motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
Commissioner Russell, second.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, let's vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Russell, aye.
The motion passes with 7 yes and 0 no votes.
Okay, clear your votes, please. Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to provide comments? Please note that the public comments are different than testimony. Any comments that the public want to provide on an item that will come up to Planning Commission for a vote should be submitted as testimony when the record is open. Testimony on the proposed UGA expansions will occur later in the agenda. Megan, is anybody wanting to make comments other than testimony?
There's been no one that signed up in the room, and I don't see any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. So tonight we have 3 public hearings. All 3 are related to proposed expansions of the urban growth areas. However, we'll do one at a time for clarity. The first hearing will be on the City of Centralia UGA expansion. The second will be the Chehalis Breen UGA expansion. And finally, the third on the City of Chehalis Westland Embody UGA expansion. would the commissioners want to set up a time limit on the, what is it on, Mindy? The length
This
of,
is,
no? Oh, how long we go on?
You just have an option to set a time limit if
Right.
you'd like to, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
It's just an option.
Remember last time we discussed
yeah, we set it
cutting
for
it off at midnight or something?
8 o'clock, I think
Yeah.
it was. And I was wondering if it would be, out of character to say, an hour per public hearing, because we still have other business to attend to.
Yes, that's completely up to you. If you want to set a time limit, anyone who is not able to testify today, you will have to continue the hearing then to another date. So
Okay.
it's completely up to you, or we can just proceed and see how it goes. So I'd leave that up to you.
I think I would be inclined to do an hour, and then we could revise it if we needed to, shorter, and then continue the public hearing, at a subsequent meeting.
If it looks like we need
Yeah.
an extra one like
Yeah.
last time,
Yeah.
yeah. Everybody kind of like that idea?
So in order to do that, I think you need to make a formal motion and
Okay.
have a second and a vote on that.
Okay, this is Commissioner Corbin. I'd like to make a motion that we allow 1 hour per public hearing, which would be a total of 3, which would be a total of 3 hours. And then we can adjust accordingly. So that's my motion. Did it need to contain anything else? Okay.
This is Russell. It was clear to me. So 1 hour for each event. And if it happens to make 3 hours, but it won't. So thank you.
Is
I
that
like
a,
that.
is that a second?
That's a second.
Okay. All right. I guess, do we need to vote on that? Okay, here we go.
Go ahead, Bob.
Russell, I.
Commissioner Corbin, aye.
Chastain, aye.
Oh, aye.
The motion passes with 7 yes votes.
Okay. These hearings will proceed in an orderly fashion, and I'd like to ask everyone's cooperation. We'll start with a few specific questions, then a brief staff presentation, followed by questions from the commissioners, and finally, we would like to take public testimony on each proposal individually. First, we're concerned that this hearing be fair in form and substance as well as appearance. Therefore, I would like to ask anyone in the audience if they object to the participation of any member on this commission in public hearings on the Centralia or Chehalis UGA expansion proposal. And if so, raise your hand in Zoom or unmute your phone or say yes and step up to the podium.
Okay, there are no hands raised.
Okay. Secondly, if there's anyone who believes that the public was not notified of the hearings in a timely manner, then raise your hand in Zoom, unmute your phone and say yes or step up to the podium.
There are no hands raised.
Very good. Is there anyone in the audience who believes that this commission does not have jurisdiction in this matter? If so, please raise your hand in Zoom, unmute your phone and say yes or step up to the podium.
There are no hands raised.
All right. When you start, please state which UGA proposal you're speaking to tonight. And please.
Commissioner Spoken, you can just skip that part since no one has stepped up to
Oh, very good.
to
Okay.
say anything.
Okay,
Sorry.
so we'll go to the next one. Do any of the commissioners have an interest in the property that is subject of the Centralia, Chehalis Breen, or the Chehalis Westland Anybody UGA expansions? Anybody here on the commission otherwise unable to hear and consider these items in a fair and objective manner? If so, raise your hand and state your interest. Okay, doesn't look like there's any
ma'am,
hands raised. Have any
I-
members of the commission engaged in communication outside of the hearings with opponents or proponents of the issues to be heard?
I just wanted to, real quick, just full disclosure, I do know the Ashes and the Althauser, so we haven't discussed this property, but so I didn't even realize it until I read the notes that they were the owners. But just wanted to make sure everybody knew that I had an acquaintance relationship with the owners of the Centralia property.
I was just going to say, I know Joe Enbody, but I haven't talked to him in about 3 years. So I'm sort of like Jason.
Okay.
And I wanted to put on the record that I live near the Breen property that's being discussed, but I do not know the Breens, and I have had no contact with anybody about it, either plus or against it. Okay.
Well, I guess I better disclose that I also own property near the Breens, but I don't know who the owner or have discussed it with anybody either. Okay, the purpose of these hearings is for the commission to hear and consider the pertinent facts relating to this proposal. We'll begin with the City of Centralia UGA expansion hearing, and I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is Mindy Brooks, Community Development, and we'll go through a short staff presentation on the Centralia UGA expansion. The staff report was sent to commissioners on June 17th and posted online for the public to review. The city, and I also wanted to remind everybody that although the property owners bring the request to be included in the UGA, it is actually the city that is the applicant. So we have a representative of the city here tonight. So if you have questions, you'll actually be asking the questions of the city, not the property owners. Okay, next slide. So just a reminder that because a UGA change is a change to the Lewis County Comprehensive Plan, the same criteria apply as do for rezones. You guys have seen those already, so same criteria. And just like rezones, Planning Commission is only charged with the UGA expansion as appropriate here based on the approval criteria. Planning Commission is not charged with evaluating future development impacts. So the future development impacts would be evaluated at the time of development permitting. You're only considering if the UGA expansion is appropriate. The City of Centralia has requested an expansion of their UGA boundary to accommodate the 2040 population forecast of 26,280 people. The site is 45.17 acres, consisting of 6 parcels bound on the north by Graf Military Road and on the east by Schubert Road. The intended future use of the site is low-density residential with a zoning designation of 4 units per acre. Here is a map of where the site is in relationship to the full UGA. The brown dash line is the full UGA, as well as the water service area, which is in the black line. So you can see it's within the water service area. One of the primary criteria for UGA expansion is the demonstration of need. Centralia's 20-year population forecast is 26,280 people, which equates to 10,905 dwelling units. Centralia's land capacity analysis, updated for 2022, shows that the existing UGA can accommodate 6,842 units, leaving a need of 4,063 units by 2040 to meet the 20-year forecast. Centralia therefore does have need and has met that. The proposed UGA expansion can accommodate 80 new units, which goes towards meeting that need. Another significant criteria is related to conforming to the Growth Management Act. GMA requires that cities can demonstrate that they will be able to serve the UGA expansion area. This does not mean that they need to be able to serve it today. It means that they need to be able to serve it within the 20-year planning horizon. The Centralia water system can support an estimated 14,382 dwelling units. The total need in the 20-year forecast is 10,905 dwelling units. Therefore, there is more capacity in the current system than is needed for the 20-year planning period. The current sewer system can serve a population of between 18,865 and 22,535. The current 2020 population is 18,360. Therefore, there is capacity in the existing sewer system to serve an additional 80 units in the UGA expansion. And per the interlocal agreement between the city and the county is responsible for existing roads until annexation and development. Then it is the city's responsibility, and the developer will be required to complete road improvements within the development area. Going back to the approval criteria of 1712-100, the applicable state rules and local policies are met. A full set of the findings against the criteria are found in the June 17th staff report, attachment D. There is demonstrated need for housing. Centralia can serve the area with water, sewer, and transportation within the 20-year planning horizon. And it is not spot zoning because a future zoning will be consistent with the surrounding zoning area. So staff find that the criteria are met based on the information in the record to date. Written testimony has come in on the proposal. We sent you the 3 that arrived by noon today. We've received 2 more this afternoon. All of them are on the webpage, and the primary concerns that were listed in the written testimony are increased traffic, flooding, runoff, erosion, and landslide risk, water supply, and impacts to wildlife. And that concludes the staff presentation. I will turn it back over to Chair Spogan for questions of myself or the applicant, the city of Centralia.
Anybody on the board up here have a question?
Chair Spogan.
It looks like Amber would like to say something.
Pardon, Commissioner Spogan. This is Amber
Go
Smith.
ahead,
Civil
Amber.
De- Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Amber, we can't hear you.
While we're waiting for Amber, this is time for commissioners to ask questions of the applicant. Is that correct? I have a question. I'm sure I've read this, but I wonder if you could clarify. On the drawing or the picture that was shown, there's many homes that are already pre-existing and they look to be on some pretty good sized lots. Could you tell me how they're going to be affected by the 1 in 4? Do they get to take advantage of that?
If they choose to, yes. And I believe 3 of the 4 are participants in the petition to expand.
Thank you.
oh, my question is, we're using the forecasted population to decide if there's need. Is the city of Centralia bound to provide a UGA that meets the need, or can the city of Centralia decide not to grow? Is it an option or?
So under growth management, all jurisdictions are required to provide within the 20-year planning horizon enough land and capacity within that land to serve the estimated population growth. And so it's usually an iterative process over time for UGAs to grow and also for cities to change zoning densities within the city boundaries themselves. You can upzone from a lower density to higher density. That's often a way that cities will also get towards need, but it's iterative over a period of time because there's a recognition that it takes a while to build out your capacity analysis and make sure that you can serve everywhere. So.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yep. And then what do you think the person that was concerned about the flooding, do you have an idea where they might think that they would get flooding from this type of thing?
I'm assuming runoff from future development, but the area, if brought into the UGA, would be subject to city standards for stormwater runoff controls. So they would have to design a stormwater system to retain any runoff on site.
Okay, so they would have like a pond or something maybe? Okay.
Correct.
And I'll
then-
just clarify, there is no floodplain
Oh.
on the Centralia proposal,
Right.
so.
That's why I was just wondering if they, where I might not be thinking.
Commissioner Chastain, I have a question. Have there been traffic studies on this proposed area? Reason I ask is I'm familiar with those roads there and they are somewhat narrow. When you're going to add additional homes, has a traffic study been prepared for this?
Not at this time because we don't have an actual development proposal yet. At the time a proposal is submitted, they will be required to submit a traffic impact analysis.
And I'll just add to that, just for clarification, since this is your first time. When we get urban growth area expansions or rezones, there generally is no development proposed at the time. And so there is no way to do a traffic analysis or any analysis like that. Those would come at the time of development with the development permits themselves.
Frank?
Thank you. My chief concern is to absolutely understand that this is not additional building in the floodplain, that this is high and dry. Okay, so there's no risk to flooding versus stormwater runoff and construction runoff is what I was hearing a minute ago. Correct?
There
Okay.
is no floodplain areas in this boundary of this proposal.
Thank you.
Oh, I believe Amber's back on. Could, Amber, let's go.
Can you hear me now, commissioners? Shoot.
We're not able to hear you, Amber.
Amber, we're not able to hear you still. Just to confirm whether it's your phone or someone else, Commissioner Fritsch, can you speak just to make sure we can hear you over the speakers in here?
Yeah, can you hear me? Because I can hear Amber loud and clear.
Hmm.
And you can't hear me at all? No? I am speaking.
So we're not picking up audio from our Zoom. I can see you speaking, but I can't hear you. Mindy, I don't know if we want to take a short recess to resolve the issue.
Yeah, do you want to call, Commissioner Spogan, do you want to call just a 5-minute recess and see if we can resolve everything?
Sounds good to me.
Thank
5-minute
you.
recess.
Thank you.
All right.
Good evening again. This is Amber Smith, Civil Deputy Prosecuting Attorney and Legal Representative for the Planning Commission. Good evening, Commissioners. I just wanted to clarify one thing for the record, ask one question of you, and then give one recommendation, if I may, regarding these hearings. And just clarifying for the record that this evening we did have a technical difficulty where folks who are attending via Zoom could not be heard, and that we're going to give them the opportunity to continue to publicly participate now that we've gotten that corrected. Is the one record item. The one question I do have for the board is earlier in this hearing, you had been asked 3 questions by Chair Spogan regarding disclosures, and several of the commissioners had indicated that they either knew via acquaintance some of the individuals that were initial applicants to the cities regarding these urban growth area expansions, and also or you lived nearby. Just a clarifying question for the record, even though it was kind of attached to a previous question. Do you commissioners that disclosed any kind of even loose connection to any of these particular projects, as a result of that loose connection or proximity of your properties, do you believe you are capable of fairly and impartially making a decision today, despite the fact that you do have loose connections or you have neighboring properties?
All right, Kathy, you want to start? Oh, yeah. Jason?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
No issues.
No issues for me as well.
Okay, thank you. And then my one recommendation, Chair Spogan, is that because there were technical difficulties, and if someone did try to unmute to communicate any concerns that they have, could we please go through those opening screening questions just one more time, just in case someone does want to participate or engage in those questions?
You mean where I'm asking if anybody would like to provide comments?
Yes, please. Just in case somebody like me,
Oh.
I would slow at finding the raise your hand button. If they tried to unmute via Zoom, I don't know if anyone did, but to just give them that opportunity one more time because we did have that technical difficulty.
Okay. So if I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public that would like to provide comments that are other than testimony. Any comments the public want to provide on an item that will come up to the Planning Commission for a vote should be submitted as testimony when the record is open. Testimony on the proposed UGA expansions will occur later in the agenda. Megan, does anybody raise their hand?
There are no hands raised in Zoom to give public comment.
Okay, then we'll go on to the number 1, that we are concerned that this hearing be fair in form and substance as well as appearance. And then I'd like to ask if anyone in the audience objects to any participation of the member of this commission in public hearings on the Centralia or Chehalis UGA expansion proposal. If so, raise your hand or say yes in Zoom.
Okay, there are no hands raised.
There's a hand out there.
Oh, we got a raised hand.
There is a hand in the room. If you would like to come up to the podium here on my right and speak.
Chair Spoken, now is the time to read that thing at the bottom about when you speak.
Oh,
I,
okay. When you start, please state which UGA proposal you're speaking to. And then state your first and last name, your mailing address for the record, and then provide the reason for your objection.
Objection to, I wasn't hearing real good, but I thought this was for an objection to one of these proposals.
No, I'm sorry. It's an objection to anybody that's sitting on the commission.
Oh,
If you feel that
No.
somebody should step down.
no, no.
That's
I-
okay.
I thought it was for the,
Very good. We look forward to hearing you in the next step. Thank you.
Point of order and clarification, please.
Yes.
I thought that my motion was to have a time limit set aside for 1 minute for each of these hearings and that they were being, I'm sorry, what did I say?
For 1 hour.
Yeah, 1 hour for each of the hearings. And then we were going to be doing them in order. Are we doing them all as a group of 3?
We are doing them in order, but we are asking these questions as a group of 3 so that we don't have to repeat it
Oh,
3
okay.
times.
Gotcha.
It's a lot of questions.
Right.
But then each of the public hearings is a separate hearing. We will close the record on each one before we move to the next one so that each of those is a solid record.
Okay. Do we need, sorry for a follow-up question. Do we need then to start the hour over for the Centralia UGA expansion? Or do we know where we're at in the hour, or has the hour even started?
Maybe I would suggest revising the time limit and just setting an outer time limit that we will go to for all 3 of them together, just because I don't know how long each one will take.
Okay. Then I would like to make a motion to rescind my last motion if the second will concur, and to propose a new motion to allow for public hearing for all 3 projects to conclude at 9 PM. And if we need to extend it, to be extended at the next available opportunity on our calendar. Does that sound good?
Have I got a second? Okay, and vote?
Russell, I.
Corbin, aye.
Chastain, aye.
Yeah, aye. Lori, aye.
Okay, the motion passes with 7 yes votes and 0 no votes.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who believes that the public was not notified of the hearings in a timely manner? If so, raise your hand or raise your hand on Zoom. Don't see any
Okay.
in the audience.
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Is there anyone in the audience who believes the commission does not have jurisdiction in these matters? Raise your hand or raise your hand on Zoom.
There are no hands raised.
Do any of the commissioners have any interest in the property that is subject of the Centralia, Chehalis Breen, or Chehalis Westland Inbody UGA expansions? Does anybody stand to gain or lose any financial benefit because of the outcome of these hearings? Or are you otherwise unable to hear and consider these items in a fair and objective manner? If so, raise your hand.
There are no hands raised.
Have any commission members engaged in communication outside of these hearings with opponents or proponents of the issues to be heard? If so, that member must place on the record the substance of any such communication so that other interested parties may have the right at this hearing to rebut the substance of the communication. Any hands?
There are no hands raised.
All right. So I guess that puts us back do any of the commissioners have any more questions for the staff, or are you ready to move on to public testimony?
I have another question.
All right, go ahead, Bob.
I can't remember. I think I've asked this before. Why only 4 lots per acre was the request, or will that be sorted out later?
We are going to propose 4 lots per acre, which is the R4, because the zone immediately adjacent to this property is an R4.
Which is probably why staff said it wasn't spot zoning. Thank you.
Correct.
All right, if we don't have any other questions, let's see, I can't see Gretchen and do we have any other questions, Megan, or are they fine? Okay. Let's move on to public testimony. We'll now open oral testimony on the City of Centralia UGA expansion proposal. Staff, would you like your opening remarks and presentation to be added to the testimony?
Yes.
Before we begin public testimony, I'll remind everyone, the public, staff, and commissioners to be civil and respectful. Applauding and booing is not allowed. Testimony will begin with those who notified the staff in advance that they wish to testify, and then we'll call on anyone who signed up when they came in, and then finally, the ones that have raised their hand on Zoom. If you did not sign up ahead of the time to testify on the City of Centralia UGA expansion and wish to do so, raise your hand now in Zoom or proceed to the front of the lecture over here and sign up. If you're unable to raise your hand on Zoom, send a message in the chat. Each person will have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. Once you begin speaking, Megan will start the timer, which will be displayed on the screen. If you go over 3 minutes, the staff will interrupt you to wrap it up because we need to be fair to everyone and give everyone equal time to testify. When you address the commission, you're required to state your full name, mailing address for the record, speak slowly and clearly, and so we can hear you. And Megan, I'll turn it over to you to call on people who wish to testify.
Thank you. I will call on you one at a time, beginning with those who signed up in advance of tonight's meeting. When your name is called, please unmute on Zoom or come up to the podium. And again, begin your testimony by providing your full name and address. And once you begin speaking, I will start the timer, which will be displayed on the screen, and you will have 3 minutes. We'll start with Stephen Bowman.
My name is Stephen Bowman. I'm at 505 Hillcrest Avenue in Centralia. And I'm here to represent the Pathway Church. And they were wondering if the city is going to require them to hook up to the sewer. And if they do, what would be the cost? They have the house and the church both there on the property. And they also were wondering who would be responsible for the water runoff from the proposed apartment and housing just south of the church. I believe there's 16 acres or something like that there. And a representative of that complex did talk to the pastors at the church, and they said that they were wanting the church to establish a runoff pond, and they're not wanting to do that. And so that's a very clayish type of ground. And with pavement, it would certainly, they're quite a bit below level of that property next door. The property next door is into the south, which is, I believe, around 16 acres, is very high and kind of rounded. And so they would see a significant amount of runoff, I believe, on their property, and they would just want to know if they were responsible for it, the people that owned that 16 acres and building that pavement over that area. And because they already, just with the runoff that they have just on their own property right now, their basement's flooding. And so it would be a major flooding if it got any worse than what it currently is. Also, we have 22 people show up at our last two Sunday service at the church on Sunday, and it's a very small church. It's just a very small rural church, and they would be impacted a great deal if the fees were very much for hooking up to the sewer if they had to. We certainly do have currently a good sewer system on the property, and so they would certainly be with a heavy financial burden if they were required to hook up to that. So that was our main concerns at the church, would be the runoff, and the hookup fees if we were allowed to stay on our own sewer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we'll have Richard Budziak.
Yes, Richard Budziak, 2214 Graf Road, Centralia. Neighbors and I share a lot of the same concerns. When we talk about flooding, it's not a traditional type of flooding around here. Yes, we are most certainly outside of the floodplain, and we're not going to flood from torrential rains because it soaks into the ground here is what it does. I've lived on the east side over on Seminary Hill, and now I've lived over here on this side of the city. And all I can tell you is that the soil is just completely different here. It's way softer. I've never seen undermining like this anywhere. And I think you're asking for trouble down the road with that whole thing. And especially if you're talking about digging some kind of like retention pond, there's no way the ground will hold that. You put the weight of pavement over that, we'll definitely have some, things giving way over the next 20 to 50 years. This house I'm living in has been moving since I've lived in it for the last 3 years, and I finally got this, slow down, but I got a construction company coming out here in the next year to finally go down to bedrock to get it to stop. The other impact would really be the roads are not set up, well. You come up to the hospital when you're good, but once you get beyond this, Graf Road and especially, down Schubert, those are very steep ditches. I don't know how you'd get transit back in there very well, the transit routes and whatnot. And, and the police and fire coverage. I don't know how my other neighbors feel, but I feel like there's just a lot more suitable areas probably over in the Logan district or, Ham Hill, might have some properties on it that would be better suited. I know from experience that the soil on that side of Centralia is a lot stiffer. So you'll have a lot less erosion problems and a lot less people complaining about that. So, that's, I'm going to remit my minute to somebody else. If you can give somebody 4 minutes instead of 3, please.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move to those who signed up in the room tonight, and we'll begin with Dean Warner.
My name is Dean Warner. I live at 157 New Wacom Village Drive in Chehalis. My wife and I attend Pathway Church. So I wanted to speak briefly because I have not seen the map before what I saw on the screen here. But my suggestion is that if that contractor is allowed to indeed build these houses and do that subdivision, that part of his property become the retention pond, not the church. Now, I know that's I assume that's between the contractor and the church, but the contractor is responsible for any retention pond because of that subdivision, if I'm not mistaken. And I also suggest that when that subdivision is built, that there's a diversionary place for the runoff to go so that it does not come onto the church property. They could build a large French drain and shoot it on down towards the river, towards the ditch alongside the road, whatever. But like Steve pointed out, the property has had flooding problems already just with heavy rain in the pastor's residence. And there's also been issues with the sewer system when there's too much water. So we need to avoid that. So we need to do our part to encourage you to demand that the contractor provide that runoff system rather than just letting it go down to somebody else's property, whether it's a church property or the residence that is next door to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move to the next person, I see Commissioner Fritsch, you have your hand up.
I'm just very, very unfamiliar with the area, and I wonder if this, if Pathways Church is on a map that we already have in our packet. Is it directly adjacent to this property?
It is. Mindy's going to try and show it to you.
I'll figure out which parcel it is and let you know.
Thank you. We can proceed. I just like a visual if I could.
Okay, next is Joe Wiley.
Hi, Joe Wiley. I live at 126 LOL Way. It's just south of this property, the proposed area for the urban expansion. Just to address the sewer issue that was raised and tying in, we moved here 27 years ago, lived in the Swanson Heights area. We had contacted the city engineer at the time and said, we heard there might be a sewer put in. Is that true? He says, there are no plans for a sewer. It had been annexed into the city by the time we'd gotten there. And a few years later, they put in a sewer and you had to sign up for it right away. It was about $25,000. We did get a decent 2% loan on that we paid over time, but you had to sign up, and that didn't include the side sewer that you had to pay yourself in addition to the group of the 32 homes that were up there that were added to the sewer system. So there is that is part of it because that's added income for the city. I don't know if the UGA is automatically annexed into the city or not. That's not really clear to me, whether it becomes city limits. I assume that's the plan, or whether the county still retains responsibility over that. That wasn't clear to me. But Levi Althauser, when he came and talked to the neighbors in the area, said that he really wanted to appeal to so many of the Tumwater folks that wanted to live in Centralia. He wanted to provide a place for them to live, and so there was just a great need for housing in the area to provide for them. So there's just several concerns that we have in dealing with this proposal. And one is, of course, the ecosystem and the water runoff. Interestingly, the other testimony came that the soil was permeable, quite permeable on the Graf Road area where we are. It's on the hill, which is just south of this area. It's not permeable at all. It doesn't percolate. And so I think the runoff, especially with the concrete and the asphalt, would be a lot more than what we have. Displacement of wildlife was also expressed in some of the things that were mentioned earlier. Schools, I thought schools were overcrowded. It seemed like there was plenty of room for expansion for schools and water and sewer. So maybe that's an issue that is, but I am concerned about the traffic. You know, I've heard several different proposals. I heard 40 housing units, I heard 80. I think the paper said 140 or 180. I'm not sure how many they're planning. I'm assuming they're thinking they're buying off all the area and developing it all. But if there were 100 new dwellings there, that could be potentially 200 cars. And with already the awkward access to Mellon Street, I think that would really be awkward it sounds like no studies are going to be done until the developer presents their proposal. And that's concerning to me. It seems like these studies should be done sooner.
Thank you.
Okay, that is everyone who has signed up ahead of time and in the room. If you haven't already, can you please raise your hand in Zoom if you would like to give public testimony? Or I see one person on the phone. If you can unmute and let us know. Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
All right, thank you, everyone. Now the planning commission's received the testimony. We've heard the oral and we've seen the written testimony. We've reviewed the staff report concerning the proposal. And there may be new questions now that we've heard from some people here. So let's open it for discussion. And
Commissioner Spoken, I have a response to Commissioner Fritsch's question about the parcel.
excellent, Mindy.
Okay. I'm going to share screen, I think. Can I share screen, Megan?
You should be able to share screen now.
Okay, this is parcel map. This is the Public Works online GIS mapping system. So that's what I'm using. And I've highlighted the parcel there that is part of the proposal. That is the Church of God parcel.
Thank you, Mindy.
Yep.
Could you pull back up the criteria?
Megan, I'll let you do that since you have the presentation running.
Okay, so this is what the commission, these are the four things that we are using to determine how we feel about this project. And we've been told that it does conform to the Growth Management Act. They've demonstrated a need because of the number of units that they need to provide in a 20-year. And they've pretty much agreed that this isn't spot zoning. So now what we're trying to decide is, will the public interest be served by the amendment? The staff has reported that they feel there is a need for housing and the site can be served by sewer, water, and transportation. So does anybody have any questions for any of the four, but particularly that number 3? Did any of the comments that we heard spark a question from anyone? Jason?
So I just wanted to let the city kind of address the pond issue. Is there any way that you would allow a pond to go on somebody else's property?
We wouldn't force them to. If they want to enter into agreement, we would take a look at it. It would have to be agreed by both parties with the appropriate easements, covenants, and legal documents on file to allow that.
Right. Okay. So for clarity's sake, without both parties express interest in pursuing that, there's no way that would be forced on the church.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was. And then as far as the runoff concerns, I mean, I know this is all project level stuff, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of explain how that would be addressed should things move forward.
The developer will have to hire a licensed engineer to draft a system, and the science behind it will have to show that it will work.
I'd like to ask a quick question regarding a sewer water hookup that the gentleman was speaking of. Will this property and the adjacent properties be deemed needing to hook up to water sewer since they may or may not already have a well and septic system in place?
The majority of the properties are already connected to city water and power. Once sewer is available, they will be required to connect.
What would, just for clarity's sake too, what would be their options should that arise and it's not financially feasible? What options do they have?
I actually haven't been at the city long enough to participate in that process yet. I know historically there were options for low interest loans. City council at one time did have an ordinance on record that waived the capital facilities charges. There are options for either low interest loans, the waiving of the fee, or outside loans.
One last question. How many homes in that area would that impact?
I believe there's currently 12. And to my knowledge, they are all connected to water and power, but sewer is not available to all yet. So
And there was some question about how many homes could be permitted if you chose to do this. Was it 80?
zoning wise, 4 per acre would actually allow for about 100 and do the math real quick, what, 180?
Oh, 180,
Yeah,
okay.
But we do anticipate, you can remove about 20 to 25% of that acreage off the top for infrastructure. Plus, we anticipate another 20 to 25% for steep slopes, just chosen lot size. Not all property owners will be required to, sell and develop at the highest and best use at the smallest lot size. So we would anticipate probably somewhere between maybe 40, 60,
Okay.
potentially more. But
Yeah.
I'll just clarify, the proposal that we received from the city is 80 units, and that's the land use capacity analysis
Right.
that she's speaking about. So when you do a land capacity analysis, there is just a empirical number that's based on lot size and
Right,
zoning.
right.
And that is often not achieved on any particular lot due to many things, infrastructure, takeouts for critical
Right.
areas, market factors. So the proposal was 80 dwelling units that we are considering.
Yeah, it just kind of clarifies a little bit.
Absolutely.
And then under number 3, again, the public interest, you have determined that there's sewer, water, and transportation, but somebody brought up police and fire service. Do you anticipate, since we're experiencing high demand on the fire and police locally, do you have any issues there?
we don't. We approached both the Centralia Police Department and Riverside Fire Authority, who would service that area upon bringing into the UGA if that were to happen, and neither expressed
No
concerns.
problem. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I have to enter a little point as well. So for those two particular things, the state land use laws require adequacy of public service at the time of development. And so those are issues that must be addressed at the time of development if there were any capacity issues with any of the public service providers, sewer, water, I'm sorry, not sewer, that's the city, fire, or the school district, or any of those would have to be developed at the time of development.
Okay, thank you. And somebody asked a question, when does the UGA get annexed into the city?
That would be the choice of the property owners. They would have to petition to annex. It doesn't happen automatically.
Okay. I think it was mentioned that initially the county would be responsible for upgrades in road and that type of thing.
We have an ILA with the city and we maintain the roads until
Okay.
time of annexation.
Okay.
Yep. And it's our zoning until the time of annexation as
Okay.
well. So it remains under county zoning.
Okay. Gretchen, do you have any question?
Not at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Corbin? do you have any question?
I think they were all addressed. Thank you. I just wanted to express my understanding of the church's situation and would like for them to enter into good faith negotiations with the contractor at the appropriate time and to work on whatever mitigation measures that you feel you need, which would be standard practice for anybody. So, you know, really, this isn't the end of the process. This is just the beginning. And so the things that concern you the most are happening at a phase down the road. So don't lose heart.
Commissioner Foster, any thoughts or questions?
Nothing more to add. All my follow-up questions have already been answered. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no questions or further discussion, it seems that, oh,
I'm sorry, oral testimony is closed.
oh, sorry, oral testimony is closed.
No, oral testimony has been closed on this item.
So with that said, it seems we're ready to make a decision on the City of Centralia UGA.
I do have one thing,
Okay.
Commissioner Spogan.
Yeah.
I would echo what Commissioner Corbin said is the process is only starting. The question to the board is it legal for this landowner to do a land use thing by these? And so oftentimes, I haven't been on this board very long, but I'm starting to learn a lot of these issues come up and people are concerned about whether the stripe's going to be yellow or white. And that really happens at project planning. So I don't have any questions. I think staff did a good job with this one.
Yes, I would encourage everybody to notice what's on the screen because that is the criteria that we have to make the decision. And so Mindy, do you have a draft motion for us to consider?
Yeah, I have two draft motions. Megan will put both of them up on the screen. There's a draft motion to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners and a draft motion to recommend that the Board of County Commissioners reject the proposals. So both are on the screen. If someone would like to use them, you're also free to make your own motion.
Do I have a motion?
I moved to send a letter of transmittal recommending that the Board of County Commissioners pass an ordinance to amend the Lewis County Comprehensive Plan map to expand the urban growth area as shown in the City of Centralia proposal.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Corbin, I'll second.
Okay. And we'll take a vote. Is that oral, Megan?
Commissioner Spogan,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Alves,
Aye.
Commissioner Corbin,
Aye.
Commissioner Fritsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Foster,
Aye.
and Commissioner Chastain.
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 yeses and 0 no votes.
Thank you, Megan. The next opportunity for commissioners to ask for questions of staff, different than this discussion, comes after testimony.
Commissioner Spogan, I think, I know this is a very long script, so I think you
Okay.
just moved, we called the vote on the Centralia. So the next, at the bottom of the Centralia call the vote is the statement. So I am on page,
Oh, on FAT 5?
let me see which page I'm
That
on.
concludes the hearing on the Centralia UGA expansion. And we'll move to a public hearing on the City of Chehalis Breen UGA expansion. And turn it back over to Mindy.
Thank you, Commissioner Spogan.
Point of order.
Yes.
Can we take 5? Or
How
do you have that built
about,
in?
how about 2?
How about 2?
2?
Yeah.
Let's take 2.
Okay.
Do Do you want to just say again that what hearing we're starting, just so anybody who joined us would know?
Yes, we're going to start the City of Chehalis Breen UGA expansion. And Mindy's going to lead the way.
Thank you very much. Mindy Brooks, Community Development, and this is the City of Chehalis Breen UGA expansion. The staff report was sent to commissioners on June 27th, 2022, and posted online for the public to review. I'm going to say things that I said before, but I'm going to say them again, so this is a complete record. I want to remind everyone that although the property owners bring the requests to be included in the UGA forward to the city is actually the applicant when the county is considering UGA expansions. This is because the burden of proof rests with the city to demonstrate that the city needs the expansion and can serve it over the 20-year planning horizon. Okay, here are the approval criteria for amending the urban growth area, which is an amendment to the Lewis County Comprehensive Plan. The Breen site is shown on this map. It is 109.8 acres, consisting of one parcel bound on the north by Hamilton Road and on the east by Interstate 5. The intended future use of the site is low-density residential with a zoning designation of R4, which is 4 units per acre. So first, looking at need, Chehalis 20-year population forecast is 11,230 people, which equates to 7,711 dwelling units. Chehalis land capacity analysis shows that the existing UGA can accommodate 1,195 units, leaving a need of 6,516 units by 2040 to meet the 20-year population forecast. Therefore, Chehalis does have need. The Breen proposal would add 456 new units, which goes towards meeting need. Next are the GMA rules related to providing service to the expansion area. There is sufficient water supply to serve the proposed UGA expansion. However, there are system upgrades that are needed to provide water to the area. The upgrades are identified in the capital improvement plan and will be funded through the general fund, grants, and the developer. Sewer upgrades are needed and identified in the capital infrastructure plan. I keep saying capital facility plan. Capital infrastructure plan. The funding for upgrades are already in the city's budget. There is an interlocal agreement between the county and the city for roads. The county is responsible for transportation until annexation, and then it is the city's responsibility, and new roads would be paid for by the developer. So going back to the criteria of 1712-100 and the staff findings, the applicable state rules and local policies are met. The full set of findings against all of the rules are found in the June 17th staff report, attachment D. There is demonstrated need for housing. With upgrades identified in the existing plans and funding secured, the city of Chehalis can serve the area with water, sewer, and transportation within the 20-year planning horizon, and it is not spot zoning because the future zoning will be consistent with the surrounding zoning. So staff find that the criteria are met based on the information in the record to date. Written testimony was received on this proposal. We received one piece of written testimony before noon today, and that was sent to you. We received another piece of testimony, and that has been put on the webpage for everyone to review. The primary concerns in the testimony are increased traffic, increased noise, flooding, pollution from herbicides, fertilizers, and pesticides, and impact to wildlife. And one thing I forgot to mention in there that I said at the workshop is there are floodplains located on this proposal, and the city will be required to place those in a conservation easement in order to extend the UGA. So that would be a condition of this approval. So that concludes the staff presentation. I will turn it back over to Chair Spoken for questions, and we do have a representative of the city of Chehalis on Zoom. So if you have questions for the city, you can address Tammy on Zoom as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Would you like your opening remarks and presentation to be added to the testimony?
Yes, I would.
Very good. So before we begin public testimony, I'd like to remind everyone that public, staff, and commissioners to be civil and respectful, no applauding or booing. And the testimony will begin with those who notified the staff in advance. Are you looking at me?
I just wanted to, point of order, make sure that there weren't any questions before we moved into the testimony
Okay.
portion.
Well, must be. Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry. Okay, do any commissioners have any questions on this?
I do.
Okay,
For Ms. Barconi. Tammy, are you on?
Tammy, just a second. We're having difficulty hearing again.
are there any other questions or any discussion between us while she's getting hooked back on?
Well, she's probably listening maybe, but I can restate it. My question actually comes from the letters I was reading today. Family wrote a couple letters and they commented on both of these projects. And their concerns were salmon and runoff and all that. And this is a loaded question because most of you know that this is what I'm near and dear to, is critical areas and buffers and river buffers and all that. And so I sort of know the answer, but I'm really interested in hearing from Tammy on these, how we're going to protect the Newaukum River with existing buffers, and it sounds like even an additional buffer over the 200-foot river buffer. Are you on there to talk about any of this?
Tammy hasn't rejoined yet. Looks like she logged off and hopefully be back soon.
Yeah, so let's just hold that question and we can re-ask it if she comes back on.
Does anybody have any other thoughts after reading through the information that we were provided and written testimony?
I'm going to wait for public testimony.
Okay,
Tammy, we see you're back on, but we're not hearing you if you're speaking. Unfortunately, we're not able to hear you. Why don't we just hold that and maybe we'll get a reconnection after public testimony and we can ask the question after testimony if we can get connected up.
all right, so we're going to move along to public testimony. Testimony will begin with those who have notified staff in advance that they wish to testify. And then we'll call on those who have signed up at the lectern in the room, and finally those that have raised their hand on Zoom. If you did not sign up ahead of time to testify on the City of Chehalis Breen UGA expansion and wish to do so, raise your hand now in Zoom or come up to the lectern and sign up. Each person will have 3 minutes to provide testimony. Once you begin, Megan will start the timer that's displayed on the screen. And if you go over 3 minutes, we'll gently interrupt you to wrap it up because we need to be fair and give everyone time to testify. When you address the commission, you're required to state your full name and mailing address for the record. Speak slowly and clearly. Megan?
Excuse me, Chair Spogan. Would it be appropriate to put the criteria back up on the screen?
Oh, yeah, the beginning criteria.
Because really, those are the criteria that we're really bound to either agree the conditions are met or they don't. And I want to try to, if it's appropriate for me to even say this, I want to encourage public comment to, say whatever you want to say, but try to address these 4 criteria because these are the things that will affect our decision more than anything else. And I'm speaking
Megan,
personally.
Go to the first one. This is the staff findings, which was fine, but let's go to the initial. There we go. Okay, that's a good idea, Frank.
Okay, we did not have anybody sign up in advance for public testimony, so we will begin with those who signed up in person tonight. Again, please begin your testimony by providing your full name and address, and then once you begin speaking, I will start the timer. We will begin with Mary Werner.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mary Werner. My address is 423 Newaukum Valley Road. I own a small family farm that's diagonally directly across from the property that's proposed to be included in the expanded or UGA area. As the crow flies, a crow could jump from my tree on my back pasture over to this land. It's very close. I have serious concerns about the public interest and the future zoning of this property. Although I laud the city of Chehalis' goal to provide more housing for its future population growth, this is the wrong place for this high-density proposal. As proposed, a parcel that has historically been agricultural and residential zoning of 1 unit per 20 acres would become 1 acre per 12 units for a total of 456 new residential units in what is now a family farm with 1 residence on it. Also, because the river runs through this property, only 38 acres are designated for development of that very high density residential use. The remaining 72 acres are critical area. That critical area floods. My property floods. My neighbor's properties flood. The flooding is increasing. This property that's proposed for development floods. And the city and county have not paid close enough attention to the impacts on the critical area. Although the critical areas are addressed, I don't think they're addressed realistically. The county has recently made investments to try to stop the undermining of New Whatcom Valley Road as a result of the New Whatcom River's meanders. And the New Whatcom River continues to meander very close to my neighbor's property, almost undermining their foundations. This is not a good location for high-density multifamily housing. The traffic infrastructure in the area is already failing. The traffic from this new high-density residential area would feed onto Hamilton Road, which is a frontage road of I-5 between the Rush Road and Labrie Road exits. The Rush Road exit is a mess. If you haven't traveled there recently, try to travel through there and get through the jams of the truck traffic, the pedestrian traffic, and the vehicular traffic on both sides of the freeway. Investments need to be made in traffic calming and traffic management long before this property should be built out, and it should not be built out to this density. In my remaining time, I would like to say that I try to not get involved in other people's uses of their own property, but I have no choice in this manner but to speak out. This is the wrong use on the wrong piece of property. Thank you very much for hearing my testimony.
Thank you.
Next is Tammy Baker.
My formal name is Tamara Baker. I live at 575 New Whatcom Valley Road, Chehalis, Washington. I oppose the UGA of this property. My mom is Virginia Breen, and I was raised on this farm. The crops that were raised were wheat, hay, oats, and beef cattle. It shows it's significant agriculture land, and also that it's been in my family at least 150 years was farmed, more or less. And in the latter years, I farmed it with no lease, then signed a lease in January 21, 2014. And then I also, growing up on this property, it floods significantly, and the fills and the redirecting of floodwaters and runoff would put devastation, harm to health, life, and the property of others. It has wetlands, the shoreline river. It also, this property has 2 ponds and a lake. And the river has endangered fish, steelhead, and cutthroat. It has eagle, and there would be no protection for the wildlife. The light, noise, and traffic pollution is horrendous at exit 72, and no plan for it. The greater other resource is there'd be more police and fire departments needed, or for the fire department, and open space would be taken. Also, that in the GMA, it says that it should be protected, the farmland preservation in chapter 8910 RCW. and 8910.05, 8910.010, and that they're supposed to protect the farms, which this obviously does not. It does the opposite. When a farm is put under, it is under forever for farming and development, and it should not be developed in the UGA. And also, the legislation also protects the critical areas, which they're supposed to identify, and the critical areas, and the city is, and obviously they haven't, because there's significant wetlands, and again, ponds, lakes, the river.
Excuse me, that is 3 minutes. Please wrap up your remarks.
Okay, want to thank you for listening and appreciate it. Also, I have a letter that my son will turn in from our attorney. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cody Baker.
My name's Cody Baker, address 592 New Wacom Valley Road. It was my grandma's property. I am part stake in this piece of property now. I do not want this to go into the UGA. It's been farmland all for 100 years or so. It was zoned RD 20, 1 and 20 on it. I don't even see where you could put 1 and 20 on some of that property. It's farmland, and it's most of it either wetlands or flooded in the wintertime. It's extremely wet piece of property. I would say the best piece of the property is already zoned in the UGA up by I-5, which is up on the hill knoll where there's no water, right along Hamilton Road. As you probably see on the map, that has already been, I think when the zoning took place, my grandma was totally against being in the city limits, and that she compromised with them to keep that into the city limits up there. Because they said they had to have that because it was by I-5. And it was high and dry. The rest of it is not. And she was definitely against having that turned into development property. And we've got an eagle's nest on that property right along the river there that's been there all my life. There's ponds all through that property from the drainage ditches and stuff that my grandpa made. They had big ponds put in down there. I just don't see where that would be feasible to turn farmland and timberland that's along the river into a housing development. It's definitely not something that I see for the city of Chehalis to annex in to urban growth. For traffic wise, like was said before, exit 72 is a mess. I don't see where we can add any more there until Napavine or the county or they figure out what they can do. And I think we're losing farmland right and left. And I thought the growth management was supposed to protect farmland. When I was growing up, this was all new and started. And I thought that's what the urban growth was, that it was supposed for cities to already have, not just keep pulling into the urban growth. I don't understand how they can keep pulling this farmland in. If we do, we're not going to have any left. And on flooding, if that gets in there, there's more than just what everybody's saying for critical areas on that piece of property for flooding. It can affect a lot of people. So I thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to have Rob and Ali Simpson. And are you planning to testify together or each individually for 3 minutes?
Individually for 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'll let one of you begin.
Okay,
And
I'm Allison Simpson, and I live at 517 New Wacom Valley Road in Chehalis. Yeah, okay. We moved up here in December of 2020 with our whole family from California, where we had lived our entire lives. Even though it was hard for us to leave, we looked forward to living on a farm. We specifically chose this property because of all the beautiful farmland and natural resources surrounding it. We were assured we didn't have to worry about urban development creeping in based on the integrity of Lewis County honoring the GMA to protect farmlands, shoreline, forests, and other resource land. Furthermore, all the surrounding areas on the Newaukum River are one house per 20 acres, and that's the way we want it to stay. Incorporating this land into the UGA would violate the GMA RCW 89.10.010, which is in place to protect valuable farmland. This area has been farmed for over 100 years and is still productive. In fact, the owner of Virginia Breen, who passed away about a week after we moved here, was dedicated to keeping her property, farmland, and forest. She was highly opposed to urban growth. It's a shame that anyone would go against what she wanted and worked so hard for. Furthermore, incorporating this area into the UGA violates the GMA RCW 36.70A 0403B and GMA RCW 36.70A 061, which are in place to identify and protect critical areas. In this area proposed for incorporation, there's a river, a lake, and 2 ponds. There are endangered fish in the river, and it's supposed to be protected as an area, a habitat for wildlife. There are also eagle's nests, hawk's nests, both birds of prey protected under federal and state law. And according to the Growth Management Act, wetlands and shorelands are to be protected from urban growth development. Another reason this area is not suitable for development is it's a flood zone. According to I won't read it, but if the floodways or critical areas should not be incorporated into the UGA, and that any filling would redirect floodwaters, which could be catastrophic, especially for us. The runoff is a hazard to our health, safety, and property, which can cause irreparable harm. Finally, one of the reasons we left the Bay Area was to get away from noise pollution, light pollution, and traffic. We specifically chose this property because we could raise our family on a farm away from all of that pollution, and it backs right up to where we moved to. Even though we've only been here a year and a half, Lewis County feels like our home. We're thankful for our friends, neighbors, and the peacefulness of being out in the country. We don't want to move again. We actually contacted a law firm in Seattle just to discuss this because we've already planted so many trees. They're environmentally friendly. We don't want to go that route, but
That is 3 minutes. Please
Okay.
wrap up your remarks.
Rob Simpson, 517 Newaukum Valley Road. I agree with everything she said, and I just wanted to add to just the whole traffic, the Newaukum River, the flooding is in January. I mean, we're 3 feet from going under, and anything on this land would be devastating to everybody downstream. I mean, we all know. I mean, we learned the hard way just moving up here, but it floods. The water's got to go somewhere, and the majority of that property, which the bottom portion of that is our property. I could throw a rock across the river and hit it. There's also 5 acres of that property on the other side of the Newaukum, which is landlocked, which I don't want my property, which has the only driveway access to that land, being used by power of eminent domain. It's just a bad idea for everyone. And then the traffic, we already went to Napavon, and there's an Arco truck stop going in at exit 72. There's also been a purchase of another truck stop just north of that, which is all going to impact everything in that area. And it's already bad enough. To add 400 and some units, I mean, we're just a sinking ship. I mean, this is just, it is not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stacy Smith.
Hello, my name is Stacy Smith and I live at 347 Newaukum Valley Road. My property is adjacent to the proposed developed area. Floods have been mentioned already. We've had the 2 largest floods on record in the last year. My entire property floods, except the small area around my home. I keep sheep, I keep chickens. Every year the water is encroaching more and more, and I am running out of safe places to keep my animals. I moved up here also from Southern California. I moved up here from Orange County, and I offer you a perspective asking you in the interest of public interest, where does growth for growth's sake end? If you were to take a look at Orange County from Google Map, from Google Earth above, you will see it has become a scar on this earth. There is or was a river down there known as the Santa Ana River. It was channelized, entirely filled with concrete to eliminate flood zones so that all of that land could be carved up and sold off to the highest developer. That has all been done. It is all done. There is no more space down there to continue developing. There is record drought. There is no water. There's plenty of Targets. There's plenty of Taco Bells. There's plenty of Kohl's. There's plenty of resources. And perhaps you think that that will make our property values go up. But I ask you to consider the thoughtfulness in planning Chehalis as a place of preservation, as a place where farmland is still important, where families are still important, where growth for growth's sake is not the most important thing. I know that limiting housing development limits the amount of people that can go in here, and I understand that it limits economic growth. But if we have something special, if we have something to offer, because we will not carve up and sell off to the highest bidder, our property values will go up because people know that we value community. People know that we value land and that we value the things that are lost when we build for building's sake. I moved away 1,000 miles away from my entire family, all of my friends. I miss them dearly, but I did it for my 3 boys because I wanted them to have something better. I wanted them to move to a community where community is valued. I have never felt so welcomed as I have felt in Chehalis in the last 5 years. I feel a part of something. I was so worried that that would be lost in the pandemic when we all went off to our spaces, but I found, thank God, it has not been lost. And I hate to see it lost in development. And I ask you to please, I urge you to please consider that growth for growth's sake is not in the best interest of the public. We have bald eagles, we have blue herons. My boys and I watch them on a daily basis. We have wetlands, we have beauty. And if we compromise that for development, we will lose something that we can never get back. I thank you so much for listening to me.
Could I ask you to clarify something? You
Yes.
mentioned that your property floods.
Yes.
And could you tell me just generally, where are you in location compared to this property?
I'm adjacent to the property. Mary submitted paperwork that shows my location. I'm 347. So the Newaukum Valley River backs entirely behind me, and over adjacent to the side is where the proposed development is. If you look at the 2007 US Geological Report, you can see my home on that flood report, and you can see how the water came up all over the entire property except the circle around my house. And I have since seen that increase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and one last ask, are there any members that are on Zoom that would like to provide comment? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself right now. Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
All right, we've heard, thank you everyone for your testimony. I know that's difficult and you're passionate about the subject, which we all understand. So now I'd like to open up the subject for discussion amongst the commissioners. Have we got the City of Chehalis online?
Tammy, are you one of the phone numbers on Zoom?
Are you able to hear me now?
There we go.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Tammy?
Commissioner Russell, you'll probably need to restate your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I think, thanks Tammy for going through the work to get back on. I know it's important. My questions, I saw some letters today from some people, and I've heard some people here talk a lot about critical areas, flood impact. You know my background, but could you speak to how carefully that's going to be looked at as you look at an application, please?
Absolutely. So what's going to happen before this project can even come into our urban growth area is that the property owner is going to have to put a covenant on the area that's called the floodplain. They have to extinguish all of their development rights for that floodplain area. And then at the time of development, we look at the wetlands. We have them analyzed to make sure to see what type of wetlands they are. And then we have setbacks and we have regulations that secure them.
And these, so we're talking the Newaukum River there, and the setbacks on the river, my understanding, are like 200 feet. But if there are other setbacks to the floodplain that even move it back further, we will protect critical areas in the floodplain. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the floodplain comes back, a rough guesstimate, at least 1,000 yards. So that, looking at a floodplain map, that whole area that is considered the special flood hazard area that's been identified by FEMA, that is going to have all of their development rights on that partition, that part of the property is going to have to be extinguished.
Tammy, what is your thought on the, we've had several people saying that the area floods at different times.
It does flood. I can't deny that it doesn't flood. So again, I think by putting a covenant on the floodplain, we are going to make effort to preserve that floodplain. It can't be developed, and it'll have to stay and continue to provide its function.
But you don't have any latitude to determine an area that may flood because flooding is becoming more critical to that area. You don't have any way that you can determine that. You can only go by what your maps tell you. Is that correct?
That is correct. I have to use the FEMA maps that we've adopted.
And what about, somebody mentioned that you were having some degradation of the road due to flooding in that area. Is that a problem in your mind, and what's causing that?
I am not aware of degradation of the road. I would reiterate, however, that our interlocal agreement does require that the county take care of the roads.
Okay. What is the current designation of that land today?
So the area that is in our urban growth area, the area right along the road, is zoned commercial and industrial.
The zoning designation is RDD 20.
Okay. And so even though it has been farmed historically, the RDD 20 allows a person theoretically to put one home per 20 acres currently.
Right. RDD 20 allows farming as a use, but it is not designated as farmland.
Correct.
In the county. I see Gretchen's hand is up.
Yeah, I have a question similar to the last UGA proposal. There was obvious area, even though the entire acreage could technically house this many houses, there were obvious places where it could not, and didn't even propose that on the steep hillside. This one, you're talking about really large setbacks, and we've heard about ponds and lakes on the property. Is that taken into account when you are proposing the 456 homes? Is that just, I'm looking at a map right now, is that just in the sort of northwest corner, like butting up against I-5? Because on the map, it looks like a significant portion of that property would not be buildable. So I'm wondering are you just going off total acreage, and then that 456 will go down as you start to apply these setbacks, or has the 456 already been accounted for? Does that make sense?
So it does make sense. Yeah. And to answer your question, yes, it will go down as we start getting into development. 456 is just looking at the total acreage. And again, it's just a ballpark number, the maximum it could be, but it will go down.
Do you have any idea, ballpark, like the lady that spoke last said she estimated about half. It would be cut by half. Do you have any estimates yourself?
No, I don't have an estimate, not without a proposal, because part of the request that we've had has been for some commercial and industrial use in there as well, because they do have an area of this site is already within our urban growth area, and it's already zoned commercial and industrial. So it's going to be up to the developer to tell us how they want to do it.
I do have another question that's not quite related to that, but I heard someone say that the owner of the property is deceased, Virginia Brain. Is that accurate?
That is correct. The application came to us from her estate.
After she passed away?
Yes, after she passed away.
I'll open it up to other commissioners with questions. I feel like I have some comments, but I want to make sure everyone's questions get answered first.
Your microphone's off.
I don't know if it would be for you or Tammy to answer this, but Mrs. Simpson brought up several examples of code while she was providing testimony, and I'm not familiar with the one she, shows. How would we know what she was? Oh.
Yeah, I can address those.
could
So
you-
yeah, absolutely. So the Growth Management Act requires the county to protect significant agricultural lands. We do that when we adopt our comprehensive plan and we assign ARL zoning designations to lands that are considered of long-term commercial significance or that are locally significant. When we adopt those, we meet our obligation underneath of GMA for agricultural lands. This site is not zoned ARL, therefore it is not considered a significant agricultural property. That doesn't mean that it hasn't been used for agricultural purposes. You certainly can use a site for agricultural purposes for a very long time, but it doesn't meet the state criteria as an area that would come under ARL zoning and would have been applied, have the ARL zone applied. So we meet those criteria. Critical areas are met by the application of protections for critical areas. So there are setbacks. Well, it's in the county. It will have to follow the county setbacks for critical areas. We have a shoreline management program that applies to the river itself. So we meet our critical areas obligation by having a critical areas ordinance and a shoreline master program. So we have met the letter of the law in those circumstances.
And the traffic issues that were brought up, of course, would be analyzed during the next phase. Obviously, there are traffic issues out there. I don't know if things that are in the pipeline right now, would make a difference or not, but evidently you guys would figure that out at the time.
That would be up to the city. So once, once something comes forward for annexation and development, there would need to be traffic analysis and that would be met at the time of development.
Well, and then just a question, forgive me for not remembering exactly who mentioned it. I think maybe it was the last person that provided testimony, but who does determine how Lewis County or the city of Chehalis grows? Are we bound by the growth management to grow? Or if not, who does determine that? How does that happen? Could you explain that?
Sure. So every jurisdiction is required to provide adequate land and density to meet the 20-year population forecast, which is set by Office of Financial Management, is updated every 5 years. We'll actually be getting an update this year. So once a population is assigned to a jurisdiction, the city and the county, you must plan for that over the 20-year horizon, meaning you must, over that period of time, demonstrate that you can provide sufficient housing and jobs to meet that demand. That can be accomplished by expansion of UGA. It can also be accomplished by increasing the density of housing or commercial uses or industrial uses within the existing city limits. And that is up to the city to determine how they will accommodate the growth over time. It is up to the county. It is our jurisdiction to decide where it is appropriate to expand urban growth areas. And that's what those criteria are for.
Okay, that answers my questions. Frank?
Thank you. I've got some serious concerns about the environmental impacts regarding flooding. I've got serious concerns about the traffic. We have a number of proposed companies from, according to public testimony, so I'm not providing any information, outside of this public hearing, but we have other companies, lined up to come into the area. I frequent the area because I don't live too far away. As I stated earlier, I am able to make a sound judgment call on this one, but I do have serious concerns about the flooding and the traffic impacts. We have a truck stop right now, Loves, and it has an adverse effect on traffic at exit 72. And I don't know where the planning process was that dropped the ball, whether it was the city of Napavine or somebody else. And I'm not disparaging any staff because we have wonderful staff working for the county that do a fantastic job. But nonetheless, we have exit 72 that is a mess. Okay, I drive that just about every day and it's getting insane. So they moved a stop sign to try to help the flow of traffic, which helped, okay? But that was a Band-Aid on a very large surgical wound that needs to be fixed, all right? And so unlike the other expansions that we've considered since I've been on the Planning Commission now for a couple of years, this one is the only one that bothers me. And it's not because I have a personal impact, but because I have seen it, I have experienced it. I know lots of people who have experienced it. And there seems to be no checks and balances when it comes to, developing the area. And I'm not against development, but nothing was fixed when Loves went in, okay? And it should have been. I think the process somewhere failed us. And I'm feeling pretty strong about this, that, I don't want a repeat of Loves. And if we have another truck stop coming in, add to it, another big housing development that can do nothing but increase traffic. Could they be mitigated at the phase down the road when we get to the project level? Perhaps. We don't have anything to say about that. When it comes to flooding, the Chehalis Basin has some 60 proposals to try to help mitigate flooding basin-wide, and so is there a way that we can ensure that that happens on this property? No, we are not the Chehalis Basin Flood Authority here. We have a very small piece of a very large process, and I have serious concerns about traffic and flooding and environment in this particular case. How can the city of Chehalis assure this board, if anybody else has similar concerns that I have, and I've never been so outspoken since I've been on this board, so forgive me, but I want some assurance somehow, and maybe Mindy, you can help make me feel better because you make me feel better all the time when I have something bothering me. But it seems to me that I would like the city of Chehalis to assure us that mistakes that have happened in the past don't happen again. And that we do what we can to mitigate flooding, not just increase buffers, but to actually do something to solve our flooding problems. And if we can do a model project with the Breen property that can set a standard for the rest of the county or the rest of the basin, I'd be all for it. So Mindy, take me down the path of the Golden Brick Road and help me see Oz a little bit better.
So your charge, as we've said, is to determine if you think this use is appropriate for this location, right? And you get some latitude in that because you have an open discretionary criteria related to, is this in the public interest? And so you are free to make your decision that way as to if it's in the public interest and if this is the right use for this location. What I can tell you is that in terms of flooding, the proposal is to place a conservation easement on the existing floodplain so that no development can take place in that. That is a requirement of GMA. You're not allowed to expand a urban growth area to include a floodplain unless if you basically tender all development on that space. So that is and then of course, the city is also beholden to meet critical areas and shorelines, so they have their own. So those are the assurances I can provide. Other than that, we don't have a development proposal. So we can't really speak to direct impacts, so.
Mindy, isn't it true that they can use that area to mitigate their stormwater though?
I would defer to Tammy on that if you can do stormwater management within the floodplain under the city's rules.
So we follow the 2019 Western Washington Stormwater Manual, and it does allow for some dispersion, but they have to do a pre-treatment before they can disperse into that area, which means that they'd still have to have some sort of infiltration pond that would allow for cleaning the water up just a little bit before it ends up in a buffer or a wetland or in the shoreline.
Frank, do you have any questions for Tammy or anything that she could do to, address any of your concerns?
Thank you, Lori. I would really like to hear from Tammy. Tammy, you heard my rant, and I appreciate you listening. And I hope you understand the passion and the concern that I have for this area. And again, I'm sensitive to the environment, especially along a river that is struggling to restore aquatic species habitat, namely the spring Chinook and other aquatic species. And so, I understand the connection that people have to land, okay? I can't make a decision based on a person's feelings about something. I have to try to make a decision based on the law and facts. And the things that bother me the most are the flooding and the traffic, which is just getting outrageous there. Tammy, take a couple minutes and make me feel better.
Okay. Well, I would reiterate what Mindy has already told you, that the floodplain itself is going to have conservation easement placed on it so that they extinguish all of their development rights. And the floodplain can extend and include the wetlands in the lake, depending on how a biological study comes out on that. As far as the traffic goes, we do analyze that at the time of development, but I will tell you that in that process, we send out the traffic study to WashDOT as well as the county and other affected areas. So this would be Napa Vine. So everybody gets a chance to let us know what their issues are. And I know that WashDOT and the county both have been very good about getting us comments so that we can mitigate any impacts in that way.
Okay, thank you. I heard you both loud and clear, and I appreciate you, Mindy, and sorry, Tammy, thank you, thank you.
Yep.
My apologies.
I don't know if, please stop me if I'm not allowed to ask this question, but is there a water right on this farm currently? Does anybody know?
I don't have an answer to that, Tammy.
Okay,
I don't have an answer either.
thank you.
I have a couple questions,
Sure, Jason, go ahead.
or if you want to keep going. So is this currently being farmed?
I don't
Do
know.
we know
Tammy, do you
that?
know the answer to that? If there's current farming going on the Breen estate?
I don't believe that there is. Again, I believe that the estate is being overseen.
But I will say that it is an existing allowed use. So anyone who owns the property, including the estate, can farm the property
Yeah.
as an allowed use under RDD 20.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, I know it doesn't meet the letter of the law as agriculture land. And I find I have this issue a lot of times with these situations. There's also the spirit of the law that I don't know always gets taken into as much consideration. I'm just wondering if it's in reality, even though it's not zoned as ARL, if it's in reality being used that way and has been for a significant period of time. Is there any other reason why we wouldn't, other than it just doesn't fit the letter of the law, that we would not apply the same protections?
Most of our zones, our RDD zones, allow for agricultural, forestry uses, even mining practices, all kinds of things are allowed on those sites. Because historically, many of our sites have been used that way, but they don't, it doesn't mean that they necessarily meet the criteria of being of long-term commercial significance or of local significance. If the estate had wanted to consider long-term protection of this as an agricultural land, they could have come in for a rezone to that effect. And we would have looked at it similar to how we are looking at things like mining to see if you meet the criteria. But, you know, we allow many, many uses on sites that people may or may not be doing, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily critical to meeting the overall county objective of maintaining farmland.
So it's, I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's kind of a clerical thing, really, and at the end of the day, that they just didn't.
At the end of the day, we designate farmland at the time of comprehensive plan periodic update based on a set of criteria that the state put forward to determine if something is significant from a commercial, long-term commercial significance. And that has to do with soil characteristics, water availability, a number of physical characteristics. So we do that designation. We also designate things that are in agricultural use for tax purposes, where the property owner has requested consideration for locals. So we do a comprehensive approach to make sure that we are maintaining farmland long-term.
Okay.
Then we simply allow everyone to
just
farm your
what they
land.
want. Right.
Right. Anybody who wants to farm
Yeah.
their land has the right to do it. So people are still allowed to do that. I don't know if you want to, do you want to chime in, Lee? No, okay. Or Amber, I see Amber's hand is up. Amber, do you want to say something about that?
Yes, just to clarify, and thank you, Amber Smith, Civil Deputy Prosecuting Attorney representing Planning Commission. So your legal question is a valid one there. And in fact, Mindy is correct in what she's saying here, but just to kind of help put this into perspective too, that designations do matter, even if uses are permissible in other types of designations. And because this particular parcel that we're looking at is not designated as agricultural resource land, that means that the agricultural resource land statutes that are particularly germane to that type of use and that designation of use don't apply in this circumstance. So in this circumstance, what we're looking at is really the code that's for the Growth Management Act, looking specifically at the expansion of urban growth areas. If this was an agricultural resource land, we could very well have other criteria to look at, and the staff, Mindy, and community development would use that to help guide their reports that they have. But at this point in time, yeah, the use, even if it's been for a century use as farmlands, which would otherwise be agricultural land, designation does matter in this circumstance, and it is not designated as such as agricultural resource land. And that's why those particular statutes are not most germane at this point.
Thank you, Amber. Frank?
Thank you, Chair Spogan. I forgot to ask earlier of Chehalis, does Chehalis believe that this is their only and best option for adding to their housing inventory? Or is this their, one shot and done? I mean, are there other options that you have to seek a designation change?
Well, we have other areas. The next application would be an example of that. But once we start moving out, everything that we have to look at starts having critical areas concerns. And so we have to look at it. We have to look at everything very carefully.
Okay.
And as you saw from I was going to say, we have a population coming in. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
I also, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, there was nothing else.
Okay. I just also wanted to clarify and put it out there for especially the audience and everybody online, is that whatever this commission recommends, it still goes to the county commissioners, and they can choose either way to go themselves. So if we decided to go for this, the county commissioners could axe it. If we decided not to recommend approval, the county commissioners could still approve it. Okay, so just understand that this is the beginning of a much larger process. So, thank you.
Tammy, is this in the channel migration zone?
I do not believe that it is. No.
Maybe Mindy could clarify that for us. The only reason I ask that is that could be a cause if there is any road issues or anything that the neighbors have noticed during flood events. Sometimes they see things that aren't on the maps, and a lot of times they're not reported or anything, but I just wondered if it was in there, it might account for that.
We don't have any channel migration zone mapped for this site. The site does have shoreline environment on it. Let me just hold on one sec. I'm going to share a map.
And then Mindy, just briefly explain what a channel migration zone is, if you would.
Sure. So the channel migration zone is the area where there's a high likelihood the channel will move over time, and there are different severities of channel migration zone and different regulations related to what you can and can't do in terms of development within the channel migration zone. You can develop within the channel migration zone. The area where you can't develop is within the floodway itself. The map I'm sharing here, so it's a little bit hard to see because the map automatically turns the site yellow, which happens to also be the shoreline environment. But the site is, I'm drawing a little circle around it with my arrow. That's the site. And so, whoops. And so what you're seeing on there is the river in blue. The yellow is the rural or urban conservancy for the shoreline environment. And then you're seeing the floodplain there. The FEMA flood area is mapped out. And let me turn off a couple things. So there is the 100-year floodplain that would be required to be put in a conservation easement.
Can they use that pond for mitigation or not? For stormwater?
So it would have to meet, again, as Tammy
First they have to
said,
clean it or.
what
yeah.
Tammy said before about
Yeah.
meeting the stormwater rules.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Bob's been very good.
Been very patient.
All right,
haven't I?
Bob.
I've been very patient. I wrote three things down to mention, and one is I have great faith in the city and the county based on 18 years of experience doing wetlands and doing development, and things don't get missed. They don't get missed. The wetlands are going to be looked at, the setbacks are going to be laid in, and this conservation easement, my comment was going to be, that's awesome. That is something that is moving us forward to protection of the floodplain. Because you don't put a conservation easement in it, and I own it, you know, I can do all kinds of things down in there. But you do a conservation easement, and I would think these other owners are gonna, that's gonna be a real amenity. If you see them down there doing anything, there's an easement. It's written, it'll be on file. So I think that's really good. Good for Tammy. I'm doing it on both of them. Traffic, that really sucks. But I go back to land use, you know, and somebody's got that land and they have the right to be able to ask for it, and traffic needs to get fixed down there. I know it. But that's my background. I'll be supporting it.
Tammy, would you just clarify what the conservation easement will require the owner?
So
What-
a conservation easement for this particular site is going to require them to extinguish or give up all of their development rights in that area. So it'll have to be surveyed. It'll have to be identified. They'll have to have a legal document. All of that will have to be recorded before we bring it in through our comprehensive plan process.
So it merely just requires them to take it out of any development rights in the future.
Correct.
So,
Correct. They don't have the right. It'll protect it.
Right.
I suspect it also says things like you can't mow in there, you can't cut anything in there, you can't ride four-wheelers in there, because that's what the open space stuff says now. So
Yeah, correct.
if it matches the open space stuff, trust me, it'll be hands off for those people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would they be required to do environmental enhancements? I mean, restoration to the habitat areas?
Why? It's really nice wetlands and habitat right now. Just stay out of it.
Well, the fish aren't really thriving right now.
No,
So we're
and I
looking-
don't mean to be flippant, Frank.
Okay.
I'm just saying, these are really, they're going to get scored. They're going to get
Mhm.
delineated, scored, and they're going to be wetlands that have setbacks on them. Well, those wetlands, that protection is going to be,
Yeah, that's one piece of the puzzle, you know, but I think that one of the pieces of testimony we got was, you know, had a pretty compelling argument in it, you know, about, you know, the hazardous material runoff and, you know, we've got organic farmers in the area. And does it actually introduce, you know, the increased use of pesticides? You know, we have increased development and stuff like that. You know, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not coming against what you're saying at all, but it's just, you know, and I appreciate the fact that there will be larger buffers.
Mhm.
I would like to see that happen anyway, you know, but that's just a small piece of the overall problem when we talk about flood mitigation and habitat restoration. So I do have faith in Chehalis, but somewhere along the line, somebody dropped the ball with exit 72, and I can't get away from that, you know, and I just want to be careful as we move along, but I don't think that I have a whole lot of discretion, you know, at this point.
Well, let's see. Can we do kind of a, how would we just kind of take a little bit of a,
I would recommend that you simply put a motion on the table and then allow people to vote on it. And there are two motions that we've prepared. One to recommend approval and one to recommend rejection of the proposal. So since we are in a hearing, I would suggest that you just take a motion and take a vote and see how it goes.
Could I see your motion proposal for?
Yeah, Megan will put them up here for you. So again, we always try to prepare a couple drafts. You don't have to use them, but this is the motion to recommend that the commissioner, that Board of Commissioners adopt it. And then the next slide will be the recommendation that they reject. the proposal. So if anybody wants to use those, you can go right ahead.
I would like to make a motion to send a letter of transmittal recommending that the Board of County Commissioners reject the City of Chehalis proposal to expand the urban growth as shown in the City of Chehalis Breen proposal.
I'd like to second that. And should we vote? I
Okay.
think somebody was talking. I'm not sure. Was that? Oh, Gretchen. Oh, okay. All right.
Do we want to vote or have any more discussion? Just go for a vote.
Can we have more discussion?
Yeah, you can have discussion now that you can discuss this particular motion if you want to. It's been
Okay.
seconded, or you may move right to vote. It's up to you.
Okay, well then I'm just going to briefly say where my mind is. I totally agree with you, Frank, that the traffic is so bad down there. And I think that maybe the same estate is planning the truck stops and whatnot. So they probably are more familiar with what is proposed to be put in to mitigate this problem. But my feeling is until we get that figured out, this should be put on hold. It probably is a perfect place to put houses someday because you've got the water and the sewer and you're close to the getting on the freeway and it may be a perfectly fine place, but I don't think it's fine today.
I obviously differ. I know just across the river, there are companies getting ready to build factories on the Newaukum. There is going to be hellacious traffic. I totally understand that. I just don't see how you can pick winners and losers when it's land use. That's my statement.
Bob, I appreciate that. That's the hard part about sitting in these chairs. Our decisions like that, but at some point, we have to make a decision. And my gut's telling me, not to support this one at this time. It doesn't mean it can't be brought up again.
I feel the same way that it probably is the best. I'm totally for private property rights.
Me too.
I think it probably is a suitable use. I don't really understand the commercial and industrial that borders it, whether the houses are going to be in the middle of the truck stop or what, but I just think until we get these other things, until they get them figured out, it just seems kind of.
Gretchen's hand is raised as well. Just want to let you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gretchen. I can't see you on my thing, so I need
It's
somebody to
okay.
yell.
We got to get you in this room with us.
I know I need to be there. I wanted to be there today, but I just wanted to say that as a farmer myself, I'm totally uncomfortable with this use of land, even though technically, as Jason was trying to suss out, technically it is residential land, but I don't know anybody living on a 20-acre piece of land that's doesn't have animals or a huge garden or an orchard or something. And I feel like to move that border of city and slam it up against the agricultural land like that is not the best use of that land. And I am not supportive of this particular expansion here.
Thank you, Gretchen. Bob?
My last comment, I mentioned to Kathy, who's new, that I love sitting on this committee. And here's what I would tell people in the audience. We don't talk to each other. We don't know each other. I know what she does, but I don't know what they do. And so it's really fun for me right now. I know this is hard for you, but I like working with these people on tough deals. But right now there's a motion and a second to reject it. I would say, unless somebody else has something, let's take a vote on that.
Yep, Kathy's got something to say.
I just
about-
wanted to say that, again, this is my first time on this committee. I live in the south of that. I'm involved every day getting off and on that exit. I think that they're putting the cart before the horse on this, and I also vote to reject. I think what you said was excellent.
Okay. All right. I think we should take a vote. Is that oral? Okay.
Okay, I will call for the vote. Commissioner Spogan,
No.
Commissioner
Hold on,
Russell.
Wait a
wait, the
minute.
motion is to reject. So if
Oh,
you
yes,
agree
you're
with
right.
the
Yes.
motion, then I'm
Yeah.
just checking, because you seconded it, so I want to make sure you're clear.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes
so
means no.
Commissioner Spogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
No.
Commissioner Alves,
Yeah, I would vote to reject it at this time.
Commissioner Corbin,
Aye.
Commissioner Fritsch,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
No.
and Commissioner Chastain.
Yes, reject.
No.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 no votes.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Do you want to take another 2-minute recess before we move on?
Please.
Just to
Yes,
let
thanks for
people-
everybody
minutes.
coming in and speaking.
Okay. Now I've lost my place. Okay, so that concludes the hearing on the City of Chehalis Breen UGA expansion. Now we're going to move on to the City of Chehalis Westland in-body expansion. And I'll turn it over to Mindy.
Okay, one more hearing to go. Just point of order, I'll just mention that Frank Corbin has not returned yet, but we do have a quorum, so we're going to continue. He hasn't returned from the recess just yet, but we'll move on. So Mindy Brooks again, Community Development, City of Chehalis Westland N-Body staff report was sent to the commissioners on June 17th, 2022. Staff found an error in the parcel list for this proposal and sent a corrected staff report on July 15th, 2022. So I just wanted to be clear. The corrected report was also posted online, and it was just, the map was right, but the parcel list was incorrect. So we fixed that in the staff report we just sent on the 15th. Again, I will say this for the record, so we have a complete record for this one. I want to remind everyone that although the property owners bring the request to be included in UGA forward to the city is actually the applicant when the county is considering a UGA, because the city has the burden of proof to demonstrate that the city needs the expansion and can serve the area over a 20-year planning horizon. Okay, these are the approval criteria. We've seen them a lot this evening, but I'll put them back up again. These are approval criteria for amendments to the Lewis County Comprehensive Plan map. Next slide. This is the site. It's 247 acres. It consists of 8 parcels. It's bound on the east by Jackson Highway, the south by Rush Kirkland Road in map 1 there. The intended future use of the site is mixed use commercial and residential, including multifamily residential. So first, looking at the needs assessment, this is the same needs assessment, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat it so that this record shows the same information. So the Chehalis 20-year population forecast is 11,230 people, which equates to 7,711 dwelling units. The Chehalis land capacity analysis shows that the existing UGA can accommodate 1,195 units, leaving a need of 6,516 units by 2040 to meet the 20-year population forecast. Chehalis does have demonstrated need. The Westland N-Body proposal would provide 1,224 new units, which goes towards meeting that need. Next is the GMA rules related to providing service to the expansion areas. There is sufficient water to serve the proposed UGA expansion. However, there needs to be system upgrades to provide water to the area. The upgrades are already identified in their CIP plan and will be funded through the general fund, grants, and the developer. Sewer upgrades are needed and identified also in the CIP plan. Funding for the upgrades are already in their budget, the City of Chehalis budget, I'll be clear. There is an interlocal agreement between the city and the county for roads. County is responsible for maintaining the transportation system until annexation. Then it is the city's responsibility, and new roads would be paid for by the developer. Going back to these criteria, these are the 1712-100 approval criteria, and the staff findings are listed here. The applicable state rules and local policies are met. The full set of findings against the criteria are found in the June 17 staff report, attachment D. There is demonstrated need for housing. With upgrades identified in the existing plans and funding secured, the city of Chehalis can serve the area with water, sewer, and transportation over the 20-year planning horizon. And it is not spot zoning because the future zoning will be consistent with the surrounding zoning. So staff find that the criteria are met based on the information in the record to date. There we go. So we received 2 pieces of written testimony that were sent to you. The comments included increased traffic, increased flood risk, water and sewer impacts, pollution from herbicides, fertilizers, and pesticides, and impact to wildlife. I will also say that this is a similar case to the other one where there is floodplain on the site and there would be a required conservation easement to be placed on the floodplain as it comes into the UGA if you approve that. And that is the end of my presentation. Again, I'll turn it back over to Chair Spogan for questions of staff or the Tammy, the representative from the city of Chehalis.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for the staff or Tammy? Well, do we want to move on to oral testimony then? That might develop a few more new questions. So we're now open for oral testimony on the City of Chehalis Westland In-Body UGA expansion proposal. Staff, would you like your opening remarks and presentation to be added to the testimony?
Yes, please.
Before we begin, I'd like to remind everybody that the public, staff, and commissioners, please be civil, respectful, no applauding or booing. Testimony will begin with those who notified the staff in advance if they wish to testify, and then we'll call on those that have signed up here, and finally those that have their hands raised in Zoom. If you didn't sign up ahead of time, raise your hand now. Each person has 3 minutes. Once you begin, Megan will start the timer. If you go over, we'll interrupt you. Need to be fair with everybody. Don't forget to state your full name, mailing address for the record, and try to speak slowly and clearly. Megan?
We will begin with Camilo Fenegra.
Well, good evening. My name is Camilo Fenegra, and I reside at 130 New Wacom Village Drive. I've been a homeowner there for 18 years, and I'm here as well as not only a homeowner, but also as the president of the New Wacom Village Homeowners Association, as well as I have the board with me. We are an association of 75 homes, and the development is adjacent to the golf course, the Westland In-Body proposed area. Obviously, our biggest concern currently is traffic. Traffic has become a huge issue for all of us, especially for our community, because of Jackson Highway. Jackson Highway has become a major thoroughfare for people that are commuting into Chehalis from areas like Onalaska, Cinnabar, Toledo, those areas. We've actually had instances where there have been accidents, the entrance to our community. Now, the key here is the fact that currently there's only one road into that development, which would be Golf Course Road. It's a very narrow road, and there's apartments and homes on the south side of it. And so then you have our entrance to our community, which is New Wacom Village. Now, the entrance to our community is a private road. Because we own the road and because of the level of traffic that we have had going into, for people that are using our private roads to go into the golf course, we have had to install speed bumps. All right, it's a nuisance for our community. We don't care for the speed bumps, but we had to do this from a liability issue because of the level of traffic and the speeders that we were getting for the folks going into the golf course. Now, we appreciate the golf course. There's nothing against that. Our concern is traffic, not only as as things move forward, but also as well as from the safety of emergency vehicles, that they won't have an entrance to the community. And so our request is that if anything is done with regards to this proposed development, that a requirement be made for multiple entrances to that community. Because currently one entrance will not suffice for the level. If they're planning on putting in 1,224 units, there's too much traffic as it is now. What's it going to be like with that added traffic if you're figuring at least 2 cars per household? So safety is very important for us. All right. Thank you.
Sir, could you clarify what is the road agreement between your HOA and the proposed development?
There is no road agreement. There is no easement. There's nothing. We own the roads. It's a private road. You know, there is a lot of folks currently that are using that road, regardless of the speed bumps or not, to go to the golf course. Okay. And so,
so it's your testimony that the HOA owns the road.
That is
but
correct.
the applicant drive over the road? Or people that want to go back into the applicant area just drive
Oh,
over?
yeah. They'll, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, currently right now, they're using our road, even though it's a
Okay.
private road. We don't have a gate on it. I mean, it's going to cost, if this progresses, what's going to wind up happening is we're going to have to put in some kind of a deterrent, because otherwise the wear and tear and the liability for people speeding through our community. We have kids. We have a lot of kids in the community. We have a lot of elderly people. The last thing we need is to have a situation where somebody gets hurt because of increased traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Sheila Unger.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. I moved to Newaukum Village in 2002, which was 20 years ago. And at that time, we had approximately 44 houses there. And in 2004, the Newaukum Golf Course earned top honors for the best subdivision in Lewis County. Within a month of moving my family to Newaukum Village, we found out the water was not potable, and the water table had gone from 38 gallons a minute down to 12 gallons a minute. There were 44 homes, and the developer had sold all the lots, made his money, and did nothing to upgrade the system. The homeowners living there were stuck. After several meetings and conferring with the city of Chehalis, we were encouraged to apply for a Washington State Public Works Trust Fund grant, and the city agreed to sponsor the grant. We received a grant of $775,000 to put in and hook up to the city water line. The added benefit of this was that we actually had fire hydrants along our residences, which we didn't have any fire before. We were assured by the city that any future developments or anyone hooking up to the city water would pay a latecomer's fee to the homeowners association. The agreement documenting this was prepared by the city and recorded on July 31st, 2007, and expires in 15 years, which is this Saturday. The developer for Division 3 came in with us and paid the $3,800 hookup fee for each of the lots he was developing in Division 3, and that was 28 homes. Shortly thereafter, the city of Chehalis allowed Mr. Hubbard to build 11 rental houses on Newaukum Golf Drive, a private road that's 40 feet wide. There was no short plat submitted, and he did not pay a latecomer's fee because the city claimed our water line went to the end of Birdie Drive, which is the end of our private road, and his houses were up by Jackson Highway, so the water line didn't go in front of his houses. So he got away with putting in 11 houses and didn't pay the hookup fee. Then when he got away with the 11 houses, then he put in 16 townhouses. Our water line stopped at the end of Birdie Drive, which is the entrance to his townhouses. But there again, he didn't have to pay. There was, humming and hawing and reasons. And I wrote him a letter to ask him why. And, they couldn't really tell me because, they actually sent me a letter, but it doesn't really make any sense. But after that, then Mr. Klumper was allowed to build 10 rental houses on 3080 Jackson Highway, which is just down the road from ours. And if that weren't enough, then they have 20 additional homes and lots built on Abram Lane. And the lots out there are 0.17 to 0.18 hundredths of an acre. In addition to that, Mr. Hubbard is building 18 new other townhouses at the end of the road where the
That's
16
3
townhouses
minutes,
are.
please.
Is it the red?
There we go. Go ahead and repeat that last statement you just
Oh,
made.
I said, I want to be a good neighbor, and I don't know if they do or not, because we've had the latecomer agreement developed by the city of all the homes that have been in there since I moved there, which is 108, be it rental houses, townhouses, or the like. We got reimbursed for 8 homes. And the city came up with a reason like the water didn't go in front of the homes
Okay,
or this
time
and that.
to
Anyhow.
conclude your statement, please.
Pardon?
Time to conclude your statement, please.
Okay, and I just want to say, we want to be a good neighbor, but I don't trust the city to develop this and be a good neighbor to the rest of us. The houses they have on Abram Lane, the people are parking
Thank you.
clear out in the
Thank you,
street.
ma'am. We have to keep it fair for everybody, but thank you.
Next is Dean Warner.
My name is Dean Warner. I live at 157 New Ockham Village Drive with Jane and Bella. And first of all, I want to thank you for doing your jobs. It's probably a thankless job, so thank you. We appreciate what you do. I do. I mostly want to reiterate a couple of things that Lizard said, and I'm speaking as just a homeowner there. The traffic in our subdivision is quite a bit. We've got a bunch of children that live there now. Jane and I have lived there. Jane has lived there since 1996. We got married in 97 in February. So we've been there quite a while. I think Jane was the 4th resident in there. So as far as planning this subdivision, I'm all for growth. I used to build houses and I love doing it. Still do when I get a chance. But we need more roads into that area. And like Lizard said, to prevent that would take a gate, which is inordinately expensive. And we have talked about it and said, well, we'd have to have somebody, pay somebody to man that gate and enforce that. That's just not reasonable for us. And we don't want to do that anyway. So I am trying to encourage you to make a stipulation that they get 2 new roads and do what they can with Golf Course Road. It's a real sharp corner to enter or exit there. And I don't know the law about taking a little bit of land and making that entrance a little wider. The road itself, like Sheila said, is only, I think, 40 feet wide. So it's barely adequate as it is. So I would like whoever does the planning to stipulate that there must be an additional entrance from Jackson Highway and another entrance off of Kirkland Road. That would access the freeway. It would add to the confusion at exit 72. But our problem is our local traffic in the subdivision. Just a couple of years ago, there were like 3 or 4 kids playing, and one of the speeders, who happens to be a resident, almost hit those kids, came close. So we don't need any more of that, and neither does anybody else. So if you can, I want to encourage you to stipulate those additional 2 entrances that will be wide enough for everybody and for public use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Chair Spogan, could we put the criteria back up on the screen, please?
Yes, Mindy, the initial or Megan?
Okay, that concludes those who signed up in advance and in person to testify, and I do not see any hands raised in Zoom, so we can continue.
Okay. Let's see. We got through this quite a bit. So, let's see.
We're at the top of page 10.
Oh, 10. Oh, my, we did go fast. No, I'm on 9. But
Oh.
anyway, that concludes the oral and written testimony. And it's now closed for the Chehalis Westland N-Body UGA expansion. So now we can discuss it and we can ask questions. And the first question that I have, since that seemed to be let me see, is Tammy still on here?
I sure am.
Okay, thank you. Since one of the main things seems to be the access points, does this not have more than one access? I was thinking I saw that it had 3.
At this point, it really only has the one access. However, in the process of developing this, the fire code will kick in, and the fire code is going to require additional access points so that traffic can get out during an emergency while the fire trucks are trying to get in.
And so are you just estimating that it's going to come off of Kirkland Road, Jackson Highway, and
That's going to be up to our developer to tell us how they want to do that. We don't prescribe that for the
Okay.
developer.
okay, so essentially what you're saying is the firemen will tell you got to have it and they'll have to figure out
Mhm.
how to get it.
Exactly. The fire code will dictate how many exits and entrances they'll have to have, and they'll have to provide it or they won't get their development.
Okay. Well, Bob, what you got? What are you thinking? Oh, all right. You go first.
Same things I said last time apply. The city did good planning. They're doing it per the UGA or the Growth Management Act. Traffic, I've been talking to these people about traffic for years on Jackson Highway, so I don't think it's any different. So I'm going to make this short, that I'm going to vote yes for this one, just like I voted the other one. I don't think they're any different. And I think that both of them ought to be pushed forward, but that's what I have to say.
Okay, Frank?
I'm going to let my colleagues go first if any of them have anything.
Okay.
I've spoken a lot, so.
Well, the one thing that we didn't really, or the testimony provided really didn't address the fact that, that it does actually wrap around and come out Kirkland Road. We're kind of focused just on the one up on Jackson Highway. So we have to keep that in mind. That's kind of a new entity there, but there, of course, it does throw you back on the same intersection that we were just talking about.
We're talking, is Kirkland Road the
Turn your
highway that runs right through the industrial park?
No,
would you
no,
turn
no.
your microphone on just so that we pick it up on the record?
Which one's Kirkland Road?
Kirkland Road is the one that goes by the ribeye and by McDonald's and then out to the country.
It goes right in front of my house.
Right.
And Kirkland Road is not a very good road for lots of traffic. We already have lots of traffic, and it's a very windy, 290-degree corners. I think that in this particular case, that the concerns about traffic and access are mitigatable. I think
I agree
that these can be mitigated in the next process, whereas the other property that we were talking about, it was almost to the point where I couldn't see it being mitigated. The issues of traffic and flooding mitigated. We're not as flood prone. We are not exempt from flooding. Our road did flood this last winter. We were closed by the county building, between the county building and the Olson property. So we only had one way out ourselves. So I don't know if this particular property,
Yeah, but you could get another way out. You can go to the right and hit Forest Applevine.
yeah,
or
that's
something there.
that's the saving grace
Yeah.
for us, is that
Yeah.
we do have a second way out. But, I think that the golf course property and that private road, that's something that can be easily fixed. And I think Chehalis is perfectly capable of doing that. And so
I kind of agree. I agree with you on that because the people that pull out onto Jackson Highway, I don't understand the private road issue and all of that.
Yeah, that was news.
That's something somebody else is going to have to figure out because that's a legal issue.
Mhm.
But if they pull out of Jackson Highway, they turn left, they go down on Bishop. They can go into Marand and go through the port and get on the Labrie Road exit. There's not a person out there. My husband doesn't even stop half the time. There's nobody there. So, oh wait, strike that. But you
Strike
know,
it from the
they
record.
can get off that way. They could, of course, go down to the 72, but who's going to if you have a choice? Or they could go back to the right on Jackson Highway and hit Forest and Applevine and get on. So I feel that one has more options.
I agree. There's more options. And then I think with, what I had in my head, I think is leaving. Yeah, my main point stands, that I think that there's solutions that are available for all of these issues that we're talking about. Sorry, what I was going to say in response to what you said just left my head. So
That's okay. And addressing the water issues that were brought up with the hookups and all that, that's something that I think needs to be addressed at the time of the project. And they should go in and tell the commissioners or, hey, this isn't, in my opinion, this isn't being done fairly and at that point, I think it would be explained or resolved.
I just came back into my head what I was going to say. So thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. So at exit 72, we have, the previously identified serious traffic issues. Right now, I-5 is a parking lot several days a week now. When I first came here 5 years ago, it was like, on Sundays when everybody's going back home to Seattle. All right. Now, my wife, who commutes in the afternoons to the Centralia hospital, gets stuck in traffic. We left Vancouver because of traffic, partly. All right. So now we've got it on our doorstep. So there's going to have to be a lot of mitigations in a lot of places. And this is one area that perhaps with Highway, it is the secondary route for traffic. So all of that I-5 traffic that gets backed up, I'm finding is not only on Kirkland Road where I live, but then it's also going up through the Chehalis Industrial Park and it's going to Jackson Highway, so we need to get in front of this train. And so.
And I do think that they are working on, especially at 72, they haven't got it done yet, but they're going to resolve that. Kirkland Road, I don't know, that's kind of like a country road. I don't know if anybody's got any big plans for that. But the people that are coming out of this development are, they're going to be either going that way or the other way. So, it's not going to be all 1,500 or what. All right, Bob. I can tell you've been just waiting.
And I'm loaded for bear. I am having trouble with one piece of property on one side of the road that has the same issues as another piece of property. And we're talking as if we're making up our minds how they're going to come out. And that's not what we're asked to do. Is it legal for these people the city to ask us to put it in the UGA? Yes, they're not going to get in the critical areas.
Yeah, but we're trying to decide if it's in the public interest. Is
Oh,
there
well.
impact on you know,
Yeah.
all of these different things. I mean, it's kind of a subjective thing.
It is,
you
it is.
know.
We'll have to just decide how we want to do this one
But
too.
I think this got put on, didn't this kind of get put on in the last couple of years, or has that always been on there? We didn't expand that.
What do you mean, the
public
criteria?
interest criteria.
Oh, these criteria, these are the criteria that you guys worked on last year with,
Okay, there you go.
John Clean on
Correct.
putting together these. Yeah, so this
Okay.
isn't, these are updated, clearer criteria.
Okay,
And you did add the public interest one specifically because a previous case, there was no place to consider public
Correct.
interest outside of the criteria. So, and what you're discovering is it's great criteria, but it's subjective. So it makes
Yes.
it harder.
yeah.
Yeah.
You waiting? If there's no more questions, would you put the positive one up? Let me see.
Do you want to put up
The accepted.
that recommendation?
Yep.
That one there.
Let's see if I can get one through. I'd like to make a motion to send a letter of transmittal recommending that the Board of County Commissioners pass an ordinance to amend the Lewis County Comprehensive Plan map to expand the urban growth area as shown in the City of Chehalis Westland Embody proposal.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Jason second, and shall we, is there any discussion? Anybody have any discussion? Gretchen, Corbin, anything?
I don't know why this
Think
feels
Dad.
different, but it does. I feel more at ease with this, more like there's less conflict between the neighbors of the areas, seems to be with issues that are able to be addressed versus the total loss of farmland, which is why I voted against the previous one. This seems like a different animal, and it seems to be surrounded on three of the four sides by that very similar type of density and development. And it seems to make sense to me here. So that's how I'm looking
Okay.
at it.
Thank you, Gretchen. All right, let's vote.
Oh, Frank's got.
Oh,
Oh, wait. Thanks, Scott.
I fall, on this one, I fall back to my previous statement that the issues that were raised are mitigatable. So I'm ready to vote.
All right, Megan, call for a vote.
Commissioner Spogan,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Alves,
Aye.
Commissioner Corbin,
Aye.
Commissioner Fritsch,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chastain.
Yes.
The motion passes with 7 yeses and 0 no votes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
That
Commissioner.
Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate your time. That concludes the hearing on the Chehalis Westland Embody UGA expansion. And I'd like to thank everybody that attended and provided testimony. Let's see, let's take a 2-minute, 2-minute before we go to the next.
I'd like to thank everybody that gave public testimony.
I have to give you 3 minutes, Mindy. All right, the next items are 2 workshops on rezone proposals. One is the Goede and the other is for Adna Grocery. The purpose of the workshops is for the staff to present information about the topic. We can ask questions. There's no public comments on the proposals because it's a workshop. The public comment should be provided as testimony when the record is open, which is going to be in about a month. All right, Mindy?
Okay, long night tonight. We still have 2 more things. So let's start with the Goede rezone proposal. We sent a packet of materials to you guys, including the detailed staff report on July 15th, and it is posted online for the public to review. So we always like to start with a little rezone 101, but we're going to go super fast with that tonight so that we can move on to the substance of it. So then we'll summarize the proposal, give you the staff findings, SEPA determination, and next steps. I'm not going to go through this in extreme detail. You've seen this before. This is the process for rezones. We are at Planning Commission workshop, and then we will decide at the end of this if you're ready to move to hearing on this particular topic. And of course, as Commissioner Corbin said earlier, you're making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and before it goes there, it has to go to Commerce for a 60-day review. You're getting very used to seeing this criteria. Here are your approval criteria for rezone 17, 12, 100. We'll move on. Oh, yeah, since no one else in the audience. And I just want to remind you, she'll move to this next slide in a second. I just want to remind you that rezones are quasi-judicial. That means all information that comes to you on these issues needs to come through an open public meeting. You may not do outside research. You may not go to the site. You may not talk with the public about rezone proposals outside of the public hearing. You cannot go to meetings outside of these meetings on it. If you need specific information, please ask staff and we will get it for you. Okay. This is the site. It is a 27.5 acre site. It's located just north of I-5. I-5, that's what we were just talking about, just north of Highway 12. It's late. Yes, Highway 12, really close to Mossy Rock, the town of Mossy Rock. The request is to rezone from agricultural resource land to RDD 5, which is a minimum of 5 acre lots. The owner did not specify future land use for development, but RDD 5 allows for single family residential development. Go on to the next slide. I do want to let you know that there's a slight change in the map from what we sent you on July 15th. The map on the left is the staff report map that you received, and the map on the right is the map today. And that's just because the property owner sent a couple of boundary line adjustments. So they're just truing up lines. So you can see there's a little bit of a difference there. Okay, this map is from the 2009 comprehensive periodic update. So during the periodic update in 2009, we did a comprehensive look at agricultural resource lands to bring lands in that qualified for the state's criteria for ARL. And the area circled there has this parcel as part of it. So in 2009, the ARL designation was expanded to include the site. The brown on the area was the existing at the time. So the red is the expansion area. What you have on the map here now are two maps that are just about the same scale. And I'll draw your attention first to the map on the left in yellow. That's the 2010 parcel map. And the parcel that's highlighted in yellow, which is 02851900650001, was a large parcel. And then if you look over onto the right, the pink parcel was created in 2020. So you can see that there was a significant amount of land division and parcel or boundary adjustments that were made in these parcels of land after expansion of the ARL zoning to that. The 2020 change was done by Goede, some consolidation, some divisions, some boundary line adjustments. The steep portion of the original parcel 02851900650001 was divided to separate the flat agricultural lands from the steep hillside. This was done because the steep hillside is not suitable for agricultural uses. And here you will see the steepness of the slope and why it was not suitable for agricultural uses. You can see that that division is right along the toe of the slope. And the lower portion is retained in 20-acre lots that are still in ARL designation. So I'm going to go through the approval criteria. Next slide, please. So looking at the first rule, which is conforming to growth management and the countywide planning policies, the primary rule related to this one is the is WAC 365-190-0503. The land has long-term commercial significance for agriculture. Staff find that due to the steepness of this particular parcel, it does not have long-term commercial significance for agriculture, and there are no adequate roads that access the parcel. It is accessed only by a private dirt road. Next slide. There are two Lewis County Planning Commission or Planning Commission, Lewis County Comprehensive Plan policies that directly relate to the allowed changes from to ARL or from ARL. So staff find that the steep hillside was designated in error and is not suitable for agricultural uses. Therefore, this criterion is met. This one's pretty simple. Is there a need? We find that there's an error. So yes, there's need. We need to correct our error. And is it in the public interest? There's no future proposed use for it, so we have nothing to assess specifically. But if the site was divided into 5-acre lots, the allowed RDD5, and developed with residential uses, the site could have between 25 and 50 or 40 residents. The rezone itself has no associated development, therefore there's no impact to water, sewer, transportation, fire. Future development could have impacts to fire and transportation. Those future development impacts would be addressed during future project permitting. Because the site is not suitable for long-term agricultural uses, there is no impact on resource lands, therefore this criterion is met. And it is not spot zoning, because the property right adjacent to it is RDD5. So this would be an expansion of zoning of RDD5. So this criterion is met. So based on the analysis of the information on the record to date, staff find that the Goede application to amend the rezone, to amend the zoning from the site from agricultural resource lands to RDD5 meets the approval criteria of Lewis County 17-12-100. And then looking at SEPA, so a SEPA determination was a determination of non-significance. It was noticed on July 12, 2020. We received one comment from WashDOT. That comment was a warning that they would not allow an at-grade access to Highway 12 by a private driveway or private road. And I'll note that this site does not abut Highway 12, and it is accessed by a private road at this time. I'm going to stop there and turn it over to you guys for questions before we ask if you're ready to move on to the next step. And of course, we have the owner of the property here, so you can address the owner as well if you have any questions about the proposal itself.
Can you put the contour map up that you just showed?
The orangey one.
So south, I mean, reading a contour map, everything's flat to the left of that ridge line. Is that correct? Down here in this.
Everything that is white is not steep slope. So those are 15 and 30% slopes on them. So if it's white, it's not 15% steep. So relatively flat.
So you got some 35 plus in there. I'm wondering what the benefit of going RDD5 is on some, how many acres is that? You said 40, must be 200 something acres, right? You
No,
said 40
this-
houses.
No, the
No,
site.
it's not 40 houses, it's 40 residents.
Yeah, that's how many
which
residences
means
at
how many
max build
people
out.
they think would be in 4 houses or something?
Yeah, so the site, let me
Gonna
pull it
be-
back up. The site is 27.5 acres. So if you round down to 25.
So 5.
You get
5
5 lots, and
houses.
each lot could be developed with, in RDD5, you could develop each one of those with a single family and an ADU. That's where you
Right.
get the 25 to
Right.
40, depending on how a developer would develop the sites.
And I guess looking at that from my experience, rather than chopping it up, not that I can do anything about this land use issue again, simple segs versus short plat. That one looks like one that somebody should do a short plat on versus a simple seg, but I don't have any say over that. Thank you.
And my question was on the residents. I just wanted to make sure that you meant residents. So you clarified that. And then Frank, what you got?
Nothing right now.
Anybody else? No, I wouldn't be excited if we were doing the bottom ground, that is farmland, but this is not farmland, so.
I mean, they'll have to deal with all the steep slopes and everything everybody else has to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, there could be a little bit of development down the road. I don't see any reason, that this could be problematic other than steep slopes and, but all that stuff comes out at a later phase in the process. So
Mindy, do you know, after the growth management, did Lewis County have a period of time when we could declare that we thought our property, that an error had been made?
You mean after we adopted the periodic update? Are you asking like after we did the 2000? Because we've done another periodic update since then in 2017.
Well, I was thinking when they first made the designation where they got down and took the map out, it seemed like there was so many years.
Yeah.
I'll take that
Yes.
question. Lee Napier, Director of Community Development. Prior to my time here, yes, there was a point in time in which a property owner who felt like their property had been designated in error could petition that. And I believe that was occurring in, say, 2009, 2010, 2011, but that now has passed.
Okay, so now this is really the only option that you have for correcting an error. Okay. Anybody have anything else?
So should we move on to the next slide then? Unless if there's other questions, happy to answer questions, but we can move on.
this is minor. So if the zoning changes to RD5, doesn't the tax bill go up?
Well, you guys would be assessed based on the new tax designation. So it would no longer be agricultural use. So yeah, it would be assessed based on its higher use, which
So-
I assume would mean more taxes.
So you're okay with, you understand that? Okay.
We understand that, yes.
Okay, so on the next slide here, so you've seen this next one coming up here too. It's our basic flow chart. So here we are, workshop. So the question to you is, are you ready to move to public hearing? Or do you want another workshop? And of course, in making that decision, it's, do you have questions, which I don't think you do based on our questions right now, that need more information from us? So we'd have to move on or move to another workshop. And then the next slide, if you are ready to move to a hearing, the next slide will show you the schedule. So if you're ready to move to a hearing, the notice of hearing would go out on August 4th. Final staff report would come to you on August 12th. If there is one, there may not be one if we have nothing else to address. And then the hearing would be on August 23rd. And again, you don't need to vote to move to hearing. It's just a general consensus of the group.
My consensus is I'm ready for a
Me
public
too.
hearing.
Me too.
Yes, I'm ready.
We're ready to move forward.
I'm ready.
Okay, then that concludes this item for workshop. Thank you for waiting that long to answer one question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for hearing us.
And we'll swap hot seats here.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one is Adna Grocery. And again, we have the property owner here who very kindly has been here waiting for this item to come up. So again, I'm going to say a lot of the things that I said last time, but I just want to keep record clear. So this is as a workshop on the Adna grocery store rezone. We sent a packet of material to you, including a detailed staff report on Friday, July 15th, and those materials are posted online for the public. We will just skip through the rezone explanation of rezoning since we've done it and jump ourselves over to proposal, staff findings, CP determination, and next steps. So we'll just skim through these slides. Okay, one more slide and then we're ready to go. Okay, perfect. So the site is located on Bunker Creek Road in Adna. The site is roughly 3/4 acre in size, so it's under 1 acre in size. The current zoning is ARL, agricultural resource land, and the request is to be rezoned to STMU, which is small town mixed use. The intended future use is the same use as it is now, which is a gas station and grocery store. The owners also stated that they want to add a restaurant to it. So in the map, you can see the reddish area. That is the small town mixed use. STMU is a type 1 LAMERD, limited area of more intense rural development. And as a reminder, the boundaries of LAMERDs are based on development that existed in 1995. And when you set that boundary based on development in 1995, it's not supposed to change unless there's an error. And in this case, we find that there is an error, and I'll explain that. So Adna Grocery is clearly part of the town's development pattern, and it existed in 1995. The assessor data that I pulled really quickly without going into archives have the structure being a grocery store and gas station dating back to at least 1983, but we know that it has been a grocery store for longer than that. Those were just the quick data that I pulled. So it has existed. It did exist in 1995. Staff believe it was a mistake that the parcel was not included in the type 1 LAMERD boundary. So just a simple error. And this rezone is to correct the error. Again, these are your approval criteria, 17, 12, 100. I won't read through them. We'll just jump into findings. So typically I don't like to go deep into the GMA stuff, but because we're dealing with a LAMERD, I want to say a few things about it because it is very clear in the state law that type 1 LAMERD boundaries don't change. They're intended to stay the way that they are supposed to change. But I want to highlight this particular one, which is WAC 365, 196, 256. And then there's the B.
I'm
and
sorry,
the
would you
C.
say that again, please? It says, mine says 245.6.
Yeah.
Okay.
365, 196, 245, 6, B, and I might have said something different. I don't know. I thought I was reading it, but it's
I
late.
wasn't trying to correct you.
No, that's okay. I might have said something different. What this states is that a type 1 LAMERD boundary must be based on the date when the county had to start planning under GMA, which for us was 1995. And the boundaries of the LAMERD must include areas that have consistent character and development patterns. The intent is to keep the boundaries tight and not allow development to sprawl out, to keep the LAMERD really tight. Next slide there. So Adna was designated a type 1 LAMERD because it is a village and a rural activity center. Adna, per the assessor's data, or sorry, Adna Grocery, per the assessor's data, the grocery store existed in 1995, and it existed since at least 1983, well before we had to start planning. The store and the gas station were then and are now part of the Adna Village and Rural Activity Center. It is an error that they were excluded from the LAMERD. Therefore, this criterion 1 is met. Again, we talk about need. A lot of times when we talk about need, it's about population need and so forth. In this case, there's an error. The need is that we need to correct it. There's no impact on population growth. There's likely a positive impact on employment if a restaurant were to be added to it, but since there's no development, there's no rezone, there's no development impacts, no proposed development. With the rezone, there is no development impacts. In the future, any proposed development would require permitting. This is zoned ARL in error. The use of the grocery store and gas station has been there a long time, so this isn't an impact on resource lands because it is not being used as resource land.
Excuse me for interrupting,
Yeah, no,
Mindy,
go ahead.
but I want to get this question out. So there's an error, but why does that matter to the owner? Is he trying, because of his restaurant, does he need to get it out of the error to
Yeah.
do it? Why does he care?
Well, right now he's a non-conforming use, and if we put him into STMU, he'd be a conforming use. So it'll make it easier to do things like add a restaurant to it. It's very difficult to you're not allowed to come more out of conformance when you're a non-conforming use.
So we'll fix the mistake, and then like everybody else, he's going to have to come after his restaurant through the planning department.
Through the planning department, but because it won't be a non-conforming use, it'll be a conforming use under STMU. The permitting will be easier because it'll become a conforming use.
Super, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is all met here. And the next slide is it's not spot zoning because it'll just be an expansion of that STMU over. So it's a consistent zoning. So I'll go ahead and read this into the record. Based on the analysis of the information in the record to date, staff find that the Adna Grocery Store application to amend the rezone the site from agricultural resource land to small town mixed use meets the approval criteria of Lewis County Code 1712-100. We did a determination, a SEPA review, determination of non-significance. It was issued on or noticed on July 12th, 2022. We received no public comments on it. And that is a summary of the proposal. Any questions before we ask the question about moving on or not?
Do you want the question? I have no questions. I think,
No, I have a couple more. I have one.
okay.
The rezone, this is Adna store is certainly Adna, right? I'm not against that. Now I'm going to talk my critical area because it's right on the river, right? Isn't here your back door right on the river? I guess that's my only concern, and it's not going to slow down me voting for this, but is critical areas. I mean, geez, I hate from when people park out those river sides and make it really nice so that everybody can get down to the river. But anyway, whatever you do to protect the river, I'd really appreciate it, sir.
Well, protecting the river is going to be required as part of the permitting process, right?
Well,
Except he's already so close. I
yeah,
mean,
the
Yeah, but I
development,
his
mean,
grandfather. I mean,
the development that's already there
Mhm.
is non-conforming development with the shoreline and that, and it can stay. Again, you can't come more out of non-compliance. It can't be more non-conforming. So if there were an expansion of anything, an expansion of a parking area or an expansion of the building, then it would need to conform to our shoreline management and critical areas. So, but what's there today is allowed to stay.
okay, so the restaurant, then a future restaurant is within the existing footprint.
That would be fine. And if an expansion of a building, it would need to be expanded outside the flood area, and expansion of parking would have to
Yeah.
be, but we, I mean, see what you propose.
Yeah.
When you come for development permits.
Sure,
Without,
sure.
but I mean, it's a point well taken. There's already impact to the floodplain at this site.
All right.
I have a question
So-
actually.
Yeah.
One thing is, so the map of if this does get lumped into the Lammert, is that just gonna hop over Bunker Creek Road, or is this gonna be just a little island? Is their property gonna be an island, or is it gonna be continuous with the existing Lammert?
It'll be contiguous, so it'll pick up the road as well. We won't create an island of STMU.
So will there be other properties that get sort of absorbed into that?
No, the other property owners have not requested it. As you move up to the north, the properties become very, very, very narrow. They are not developed with like uses, and they at some point become entirely floodplain. So I don't know that it would be appropriate. This one is appropriate mostly because it's been in a grocery store and commercial use for a very long time. So
So the Lammert footprint will be there, but then the properties in it I don't know. I guess it's a little confusing to me what that new map will look like if that little chunk is included. Like, is there property between the grocery store and Bunker Creek? But I guess the map I'm looking at just has this little.
no, you're looking at the right of way. So what
Yeah.
you're looking at is the right of way of Bunker Creek. So what we'll do is we'll just do a little kick out of the STMU. So it'll pick up that right of way, that strange nothing area there. And then it'll pick up the lot as well.
Okay. And then my second question is, since this is an error on the county's part, is the landowner having to pay the $4,000 to rezone this, or is that onus on them to correct the error that they didn't have anything to do with?
Yeah, the fees are still due because of the time it takes the staff to process these. Even though it's an error, there's a significant amount of staff time that goes into processing them through.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Curious. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, are we ready to move towards hearing? I'm seeing a lot of head nodding on this
I am.
end.
We can put up just really quickly the last slide, but that has the dates on it, just so people can see if anybody's stayed up really late and is watching with us. One more down. So if you guys are ready to move, the notice will be on August 4th. Final staff report, it probably won't be one, but if there were one, it'd be August 12th, and then the hearing will be on August 23rd.
All right. So,
Thank you so much. I know. Thank you so much for
Thank
sticking
you.
it out.
I wish we could take more time so you felt like it was worth your while. Would you like a few more hoops to jump through? Hey, did they notice they also cut your income while they got here because they started by saying, you can't go there? Where do I buy my beer when I'm out there? I won't be going there. So I can still buy beer there.
You can buy beer on our side of the road, but not the other side.
Oh, I'm just meaning because they told me that I can't visit with you while all this is going on.
You come out of value.
You can, you just cannot talk about the substance of this at all. Thank you. Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Okay, are there any items from the staff for the good of the order?
You guys are you're gonna kill me because it's so late, but I do have an item but what I'd like to do is just tell you what it is, and then we can table it for next time. So I have a draft transmittal letter for the YMCA. We talked about comments that you guys wanted included in it, and I was gonna walk through those, but rather than doing that, because it's late and I think we're all tired, we'll just send that out tomorrow to you. It's just a draft, and so we can pop it, or Friday maybe. We have to send things on Friday anyway.
We already sent it to them
Oh, you
today.
did?
Yeah, y'all sent it to us and I read it and I liked it and I'm
I
ready
did.
to move it.
I thought it was fine.
Do you guys
too.
we already sent it and you already read it? I apparently have lost my mind
That's
because it's
okay.
just too late.
So do you need a motion to move it?
No, so
Okay.
did everybody have a chance to review it? Is there anybody who didn't? Gretchen or?
I did not.
Okay.
I'm sure it's great.
Well, if everybody's comfortable, we don't need a motion or anything. I just wanted to make sure that we are capturing the spirit of your guys's things that you wanted to convey to the Board of County Commissioners so that they understood
I thought it did.
the struggle.
I thought you took my soapbox and crafted it very nicely.
Thank you. Well, if there's no, I mean, there's no vote. So Gretchen, if you wanted to read it, you certainly can. And there's no hurry because all of these rezones and UGAs are going to get submitted to Commerce at the same time for their 60-day review. So I'm not going to be sending transmittal letters anywhere around. So if you want to just wait till next time so everyone has a chance to read it, we can do that.
Okay.
Since we're talking about it, I'd like to do that as well with our transmittal letters for the decisions you guys made this evening, because I feel like there was a lot of conversation about those to make sure that we're capturing not just you recommend it or don't recommend it, but to capture that. So if you would just, if you're okay with it, just give me the leeway and I'll take a stab at drafting those and bring those back as well for your guys' review.
Like just pros and cons. This is what, I mean, is that what you're sort of thinking about doing? These are some things that some of the positive people said, and this is what.
Not necessarily the testimony, unless if you wanted me to highlight, but from you guys, I mean, what we did for this one was we explained kind of the three main issues of concern that you had, or that you struggled with in making the decision. And so what I would probably do is just try to capture, 3 or 4, whatever it seems like is a way to round out those and just put some summary on how, and I think it was pretty clear. You guys
I
had
like the way
traffic,
you did it
flooding.
because it kind of gives them an idea of what we went through.
Yeah.
Assuming they don't sit and watch the YouTube video off of this. It gives them an idea. Oh, okay, those items were addressed. Well, that's.
Yeah. Can the county commissioners watch our videos?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They can.
I thought they could, but I
Absolutely.
didn't know if they were bound by the same straitjackets that we are about
No,
getting
this is-
information outside.
This is public record. So this has all been
okay.
done according to open public meeting law
Mhm.
and met all of the requirements. And so these are public meetings. Anybody is free to watch them and to read all the testimony. We certainly would want the Board of County Commissioners to read previous testimony and to read your staff report and to become as familiar with these things as they possibly can before making their
Yeah,
recommendations.
Your transmittal was outstanding, I thought. So thank you. I would
Yeah,
love for you to
thanks.
take a stab at the rest of these.
Yes, I will do that. I'll take a stab at them. I'll bring them back. Megan will remind me if we've already
Maybe,
sent
Mindy,
things.
if you want anybody to email you anything that they particularly want to see in there or something, that we wouldn't have to go to a whole another meeting to do that.
I think that's a great idea.
If
you have-
anybody has something, or Bob, I can tell you kind of want to say, no, I voted no. Don't forget the
See?
beer.
He said no again.
When we go 7-0 to them, it's simple. When we go 5-2, we ought to say what the issue was that those two people had, because I'd be interested.
Well, you could send it to
I
Mindy.
agree.
Put it in.
Yeah,
That's what I was just asking, and you
Yeah.
said you were gonna do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
I
But I think it's perfectly fine if you wanted to share what you would like included,
Yeah.
as long as it's, something that's been part of the record, because
right.
record's closed, but.
Because we are advising, so.
Right. So if
Yeah.
you would like something said in a particular way, I feel like last time you wanted something said in a
Right.
particular way with the highest and best use. If you want something said in a particular way, certainly are free to share that with me and I'll bring
Yeah.
it back.
Okay.
Amber, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify too, so we make sure we don't perform any type of serial meeting. If you do have recommendations that you would like to have Mindy incorporate into that letter of transmittal, please send it only directly to her, not to everyone else, to be able to communicate and discuss that. She can, under the OPMA, take advisement from each of you collectively, so long as you don't actively communicate with one another. So just please be mindful of that. Thank you.
Thank you for,
Thank
yes,
you.
thank you for
Thank
that
you.
clarification.
Yes.
Only
Yeah.
send it to me.
Always remind us.
Thank you, Amber.
Never gets old.
That's it for me.
Okay, is there anything from the planning commissioners? Okay, we'll call it a day. The next meeting will be August 9th on 2022. And the agenda items will be a public hearing on the Goede Apollo mining opt-in rezone proposal. And anything else? No?
Yes, I will be out of the area that week, so I will miss the meeting on August 9th.
And then I won't be attending because of my conflict, so that leaves Bob in charge.
Yeah, so as we get a little bit closer, we'll definitely make sure and poll everybody and make sure we have a quorum then, since
Okay.
we'll have Lori recusing herself and Frank out of town and not able to attend. So, and see if Bob will be willing to chair for us that evening. But yeah, that's the only item on the agenda that night.
All right, motion to adjourn?
Moved.